Hello, dear viewers. Today we journey into the second day of the Bardo, a realm where the soul confronts its own reflections, the so-called karma mirror. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you can continue exploring these profound insights into consciousness, life, and death with us. The second day of the Bardo presence. A truly profound encounter. The soul meets the mirror of karma. But why does this happen? Why must the deceased face this mirror? The karma mirror of the second day is not merely a scene of moral judgment. Psychologically, it represents the final stage of self-integration, the ultimate therapeutic process of the psyche at the threshold of death. This is where ancient spiritual teaching intersects with modern psychology. From Freud to Jung and even contemporary trauma theory, the symbolism embedded here is extraordinarily rich. Think of it this way: the first karma mirror is the unconscious mind's final question to the ego. In the moments immediately after death, consciousness still operates with the ego at its center. But with the physical body gone, the ego can no longer engage with the material world. At this crucial moment, the unconscious projects all repressed memories and feelings like a vivid movie back to the self. This, in Tibetan teachings, is what is called the karma mirror. It is not God's judgment being passed from above, but the unconscious reflecting upon itself. Psychologically, it closely mirrors what we call a life review in near-death experiences. An astonishing panorama of one's life unfolding in a single moment. People who report such experiences often say, "All the things I have done flashed before me not as an observer, but as the part of me that lived them all again." This is not mere memory replay. It is a full re-experiencing of emotion, a holistic integration of the self. The karma mirror returns to the ego. Not just images, but the weight of emotional responsibility. It is as if the unconscious says, "Now, face the consequences of the emotions you created." The second karma mirror also functions as a restoration of the repressed self. Carl Jung once said, "The maturation of the soul begins when we confront our own shadows." The immense mirror the deceased faces symbolizes the shadow self. Throughout life, we suppress, deny, and hide parts of ourselves. Desires, anger, guilt. In the moments after death, these emerge in full force, demanding recognition. Psychologically, this is the unconscious calling for integration. You are not only the virtuous self you present to the world. There is another, denied part of you. Only by embracing it can you return to wholeness. Tibetan teachings describe this as follows. The peaceful deity represents compassion of the mind. The wrathful deity represents the shadow of the mind. In modern psychological terms, this is the process of reconciling with the shadow, integrating all facets of the self. Passing through this stage is essential for entering the next phase, the expansion of consciousness or transcendence. The phrase re-experiencing here is crucial. In the mirror, the deceased relives past sins and suffering. This mirrors the therapeutic concept of trauma re-experiencing. In trauma therapy, healing does not come from forgetting pain, but by bringing it into conscious awareness and observing it under the light of consciousness. Thus, when the soul relives its violence, deceit, and anger, it is not being punished. It is engaging in a process of emotional integration. The previously buried feelings of guilt and anger are acknowledged, and in this acknowledgement, they are transformed. Passing through this process, the soul emerges cleansed. Guilt dissolves, and in its place arises compassion and mercy. The deceased might then realize, yes, this was the shadow of my mind. If my mind changes, then the world around me changes too. This is the birth of psychological awakening, the moment of insight. When the illusion of self-projection dissolves, revealing that the external world is nothing more than the reflection of one's own mind. It is here, in this intimate confrontation with oneself, that true freedom begins. The mirror is merciless, yet profoundly merciful. It forces the soul to confront all that it has denied, so that it may return to wholeness. As you reflect on this, consider your own life. How often do we ignore our shadows? How often do we act without acknowledging the hidden parts of ourselves? This teaching reminds us that understanding and integrating our inner darkness is not only the path to spiritual maturity, but the foundation for a life of authentic compassion. If this exploration resonated with you, please hit the subscribe button. Together, we will continue to journey through consciousness, the mysteries of the Bardo, and the philosophical truths that illuminate our lives. Remember, the path to self-awareness begins with facing your own mirror. Not tomorrow, but today. Hello, dear viewers, and welcome back. Today, we continue our journey into the second day of the Bardo, a realm where the soul encounters the mirror of karma. Before we dive deeper, make sure to subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell. Each subscription lights a path for us to explore consciousness, death, and the profound philosophy that bridges life and afterlife. The fourth reason the mirror of karma is so significant is this. It is not a device for judgment or punishment, but a profound instrument of healing for the mind. In essence, the karma mirror exists not to impose retribution, but to offer consciousness a final chance to purify and integrate itself. It is the last opportunity for self-recognition and inner reconciliation. Tibetan practitioners remind us, do not be startled by the reflection in the mirror. That world is one you have created. When you realize this, the mirror itself transforms into light. This is crucial. The terrifying images of guilt and remorse are not threats, but the unconscious speaking to the ego one last time. It whispers you are still capable of love. The mirror is not a tribunal of sin. It is the psyche offering a final chance at compassion. Now let us return to the narrative. In the darkness, a massive mirror arises, vast as the sky itself. Within it, the entirety of the deceased's life is reflected. Every small betrayal, every lie, every unfulfilled desire, every moment of anger and greed, nothing escapes the mirror's gaze. The mirror asks silently, "This was your life. Now, where will the seeds of your karma lead you?" The soul closes its eyes, but the reflection does not vanish. This is not mere observation, it is re-experiencing. All pain, all guilt flows back into the soul as though it were happening anew. Then, from afar, a drum sounds. Dum dum dum, a somber echo announces the third day approaches. Yet amidst the darkness, the soul perceives a subtle smile. Light has vanished, the spirit floats alone in emptiness, and the fear remains. And yet, within that fear, a faint glimmer of recognition begins to emerge. Yes, this was the shadow of my mind. If my mind changes, then surely the world around me will also change. At that moment, the cosmos twists, and a new doorway opens. Beyond this threshold await even greater illusions, more profound challenges. The soul steps forward, compelled to walk into the unknown once again. This is the second day of the Bardo. Those who failed to recognize the light on the first day are now immersed in the illusions and fears of their own making. The peaceful deities represent the compassion of the mind, while the wrathful deities reflect the shadows within the mind. Yet they are not separate, they are one mind. Without realizing this, the light retreats and the darkness deepens. Ultimately, the lesson becomes clear. While religions may differ, the light is one. The Bodhisattva in Buddhism, the Virgin Mary in Christianity, the Nur of Islam, and even the conscience of the atheist. Each is a reflection of the same truth, seen through different lenses. Each is a mirror of the same heart, the same ultimate reality. The Tibetan Book of the Dead poses this eternal question: will you fear the light, or will you have the courage to see yourself within it? May today's story resonate somewhere in your heart, however faintly. This channel is dedicated to exploring consciousness after death, the essence of philosophical spirituality, and the deep truths hidden in human awareness. If this journey stirred something within you, please subscribe and like this video. Your support becomes a guiding light for our continued exploration of the mind, the soul, and the mysteries beyond life. Thank you for joining me, and may you face your own mirror with courage and compassion. And as the soul steps forward into the next threshold, it carries a subtle smile, the quiet recognition that the shadows it has faced are its own, and that by transforming its own heart, it can reshape the world it perceives. The new visions awaiting beyond the next door are not threats, but opportunities for deeper understanding and awakening. If you found value in this journey into the mind and consciousness, subscribe and join us as we continue to explore the profound truths that lie beyond life itself. Welcome, dear viewers. On this channel, we explore the profound questions of human death, consciousness, and what lies beyond through the lenses of philosophy, psychology, and mysticism. If you haven't already, click subscribe and turn on notifications so we can journey together toward the light of truth. Today, we venture into the second day after death, as described in the Tibetan Book of the Dead, the Bardo, also known as the intermediate state of phenomena. Imagine standing on the threshold of existence itself, where the body has ceased to function, yet the mind consciousness persists. What unfolds next is not mere speculation, but an exploration of inner realities experienced by those who have crossed the boundary of life. The Bardo is the domain experienced by those who fail to recognize the pure, luminous nature of consciousness immediately after death. It is a realm of visions, auditory phenomena, and projections shaped by the karma accumulated in previous lives. Here the deceased may encounter serene deities, embodying compassion or terrifying wrathful forms, all projections of the mind itself. Those who fail to perceive their illusory nature may be overwhelmed by fear, while those who have cultivated inner calm can maintain clarity and even reach transcendent states. This teaching exists not to instill terror, but to help the deceased recognize the illusions created by their own consciousness, and ultimately to break free from the cycle of samsara. The second day after death represents the first awakening of consciousness. Beyond the physical body, the Tibetan Book of the Dead states plainly, consciousness does not vanish after death. Though the body cools and decays, the functioning of the mind, the stream of consciousness, or citta, continues. This stream of consciousness projects karmic traces outward, forming visions that appear as gods, demons, or radiant lights. These are not external realities, but reflections of the mind's own patterns, what Tibetan Buddhism calls the intermediate state of phenomena, the Bardo. Before delving further into these profound experiences, let us consider the scientific basis, suggesting that consciousness may indeed persist beyond physical death. The claim that consciousness survives bodily cessation is not yet fully proven, but a growing body of research offers intriguing clues. Near-death experiences, NDEs, and empirical evidence. One of the most compelling lines of research comes from near-death experiences. Pioneering scholars like Dr. Bruce Grayson of the University of Virginia and Dr. Sam Parnia of New York University have documented numerous cases in which patients in clinical death who underwent resuscitation, reported vivid conscious experiences. The AWARE study, published in Resuscitation 2014 by Sam Parnia and colleagues, examined patients whose hearts had stopped for 3 to 5 minutes. Astonishingly, some reported observing themselves from above, accurately recalling events in the resuscitation room, details impossible to know from a purely physical perspective. These cases suggest that consciousness in some form may persist independently of measurable brain activity. Bruce Grayson's NDE scale, based on over 1,000 cases, identifies consistent patterns, encounters with beings of light, feelings of profound peace, separation from the physical self, and the dissolution of time. These experiences resonate deeply with the teachings of the Tibetan Book of the Dead, where consciousness is said to remain active even after bodily death. Conscious activity post-brain death. A second line of research comes from studies of brain activity immediately following cardiac arrest. In 2023, researchers at the University of Michigan observed that gamma wave activity, associated with awareness and integrative consciousness, sharply increased in the sensory cortex for approximately 30 seconds after the heart stopped. This phenomenon aligns uncannily with the Tibetan concept of Chung Jong Fung, or the last wind of consciousness, which describes the persistence of the mind at the moment of death. Quantum consciousness and panpsychism. A third perspective comes from the quantum consciousness theory, proposed by Roger Penrose and Stuart Hameroff. They suggest that consciousness is not merely a byproduct of neural activity, but arises from quantum processes within microtubules in brain cells. Quantum entanglement within these microtubules could, in principle, allow the informational patterns of consciousness to persist beyond physical death, diffusing into the fundamental fields of the universe. While not yet empirically confirmed, this theory echoes the Tibetan assertion that Sita is not material, but an aspect of universal reality. Philosophical and neuroscientific perspectives. Modern philosophers and neuroscientists are increasingly moving away from strict materialism toward what might be called consciousness-centered ontology or panpsychism. David Chalmers has famously framed consciousness as the hard problem, asserting that subjective experience cannot be fully explained by matter alone. Similarly, Christoph Koch's integrated information theory mathematically models consciousness as arising from the integration of information, suggesting the potential independence of consciousness from the physical brain. These converging lines of inquiry, empirical, theoretical, and philosophical, suggest that the Tibetan teaching that consciousness does not vanish after death may be less a matter of religious faith and more an insight supported by multidisciplinary research. Death, then, is not an end but a transition, a point at which consciousness may continue, exploring new dimensions of reality. As we prepare to delve deeper into the Chonyi Bardo, let us remember the light described in Tibetan texts. Whether recognized or missed, is not a metaphor alone. It is a guide, a mirror of the mind, and a portal to understanding the profound continuity of consciousness. If you wish to continue exploring the frontiers of life, death, and consciousness, and to uncover the intersections of science, philosophy, and mysticism, subscribe to this channel and click the notification bell. Together, we will walk toward the luminous truth that lies beyond the boundaries of the known world. Welcome back, dear viewers. If you are following our journey into the mysteries of consciousness and the afterlife, you know that we have been exploring the second day after death, as described in the Tibetan Book of the Dead, the Chonyi Bardo, the intermediate state of phenomena. Today, we continue our investigation with a focus on cutting-edge, scientific and philosophical insights that illuminate what happens to consciousness at the threshold of death. If you haven't yet, please click subscribe and turn on notifications. Your support allows us to explore these profound questions together. While the Tibetan texts speak of consciousness persisting after the body ceases to function, modern research is beginning to investigate this claim. From multiple perspectives: neuroscience, near-death experience studies, and even quantum theories of mind. Today, we will delve into several key scientific findings that resonate strikingly with the ancient wisdom of the Bardo Thodol, conscious activity at the moment of death. The first line of evidence comes from the study of neural activity in individuals during the final moments of life. Researchers at the University of Michigan Medical School, in a 2023 study, monitored brain activity in patients during cardiac arrest. Remarkably, they discovered that gamma-wave activity in the sensory cortex associated with awareness, integration, and higher-order consciousness surged for approximately 30 seconds after the heart stopped beating. Gamma waves are not merely background electrical signals. They correlate with the integration of sensory information and the subjective experience of self. In other words, even after the physical body has ceased functioning, the brain exhibits a brief window of highly organized, conscious activity. This empirical observation aligns uncannily with the Tibetan concept of Chung Fung, or the last wind of consciousness, described in the Bardo Thodol as the lingering presence of awareness at the moment of death. Near-death experiences, patterns, and commonalities. Complementing these findings are decades of near-death experience NDE research. Scholars such as Bruce Grayson of the University of Virginia and Sam Parnia of New York University have documented numerous cases in which patients, clinically declared dead, later report vivid conscious experiences. In many of these cases, individuals describe a profound separation from the body, a panoramic life review, encounters with beings of light, and a collapse of temporal awareness. The AWARE Study 2014, led by Sam Parnia and colleagues, provides especially compelling evidence. Patients who were clinically dead with no measurable cardiac output or detectable brain waves for several minutes reported observing themselves from above, accurately recalling conversations and events occurring in the room. Such accounts suggest that consciousness, in some form, can persist, independently of measurable brain function, echoing the Tibetan assertion that the mind stream does not extinguish with bodily death. Quantum consciousness, theoretical perspectives. Beyond empirical studies, theoretical frameworks such as quantum consciousness theory offer intriguing possibilities. Proposed by Roger Penrose and Stuart Hameroff, this theory posits that consciousness arises from quantum processes within microtubules in brain neurons. These microtubules may engage in quantum entanglement, potentially allowing information patterns that constitute consciousness to persist beyond physical death. While still speculative and not fully verified, this perspective resonates with the Tibetan view that consciousness, Sita, is not merely material but fundamentally universal. Philosophical insights from materialism to panpsychism. Philosophically, contemporary discourse is shifting from a purely materialist view of consciousness toward models that recognize consciousness as fundamental. David Chalmers' hard problem highlights the difficulty of explaining subjective experience through physical processes alone. Christoph Koch's integrated information theory, TILIT, offers a mathematical framework suggesting that consciousness arises from the degree of information integration and may be modeled independently of specific material substrates. Taken together, these studies and theories challenge the conventional notion that death marks the definitive end of experience. Instead, they suggest that death may represent a transition, a reorganization rather than cessation of consciousness. The Tibetan Book of the Dead's claim that consciousness does not vanish after death can be seen not only as spiritual teaching, but as a philosophical and scientific hypothesis that continues to gain resonance. Implications for understanding the mind and afterlife. These insights invite us to reconsider the nature of our consciousness. If gamma wave activity persists after clinical death, if near-death experiences reveal consistent patterns of awareness, and if quantum theories suggest the information of consciousness may endure, then perhaps death is not a termination but a threshold. Just as the Tibetan texts propose, the mind's luminous essence can remain active, navigating the intermediate state of phenomena, and reflecting the deep imprints of karma. In a broader sense, this convergence of ancient wisdom and modern science encourages us to reflect on the continuity of subjective experience. Death, rather than being an abrupt cessation, may be a profound transition, a moment in which consciousness sheds its physical form, but retains its inherent potential for insight, understanding, and transformation. As we conclude today's exploration, remember that these findings from neuroscience to near-death studies, from quantum theory to philosophical reflection, all point toward a single possibility: consciousness may endure beyond the cessation of the body. This perspective invites us to approach life, death, and the unknown with curiosity, courage, and compassion. If this discussion resonates with you and you wish to explore more about consciousness, death, and the intersection of science and spirituality, please subscribe to this channel and click the notification bell. Together, we will continue walking the path toward the luminous truths that lie beyond our ordinary perception, exploring the mysteries of existence that unite philosophy, psychology, and ancient wisdom. Welcome back, dear viewers. On this channel, we explore the mysteries of human consciousness, death, and the realms beyond, blending philosophy, psychology, and mystical insight. Today, we continue our journey through the Tibetan Book of the Dead, focusing on the second day after death, the Bardo, the intermediate state of phenomena. You may ask, how does the Tibetan Book of the Dead explain that consciousness does not vanish after death? Unlike many spiritual texts that merely ask you to believe, the Bardo presents a systematic three-step approach. First, logical reasoning; second, empirical evidence from the phenomena of consciousness; and third, verification through disciplined practice. First, the logical argument. The Bardo begins with a profound assertion. Consciousness is not material. It defines awareness, or shis in Tibetan, as follows. Awareness, or shis, neither arises nor ceases. While it interacts with matter, it is not matter itself. This is a radical claim. Consciousness is not merely a byproduct of the brain. It is a relational phenomenon arising on the canvas of emptiness. Buddhist logic explains that all forms and phenomena exist through interdependent causes and conditions. Yet the awareness that perceives these phenomena, the very act of recognition, is not itself subject to the impermanence of its objects. In other words, when the body perishes, consciousness does not end, it continues, transforming rather than ceasing. Second, phenomenological evidence. The Tibetan Book of the Dead provides a detailed map of consciousness for the deceased. It depicts the mind's experiences step by step as it navigates the post-mortem. Intermediate states, the Bardo. The text explains, even when the body cools, the mind's wind does not cease. Consciousness traverses the dreamlike Bardo, witnessing its own karmic projections. These depictions are not mythic allegories, but phenomenological observations validated through practice. Tibetan meditators through dream yoga and Shikai Bardo yoga, experience firsthand that consciousness can persist independently of physical senses. This transforms the text from a book of faith into a guide for experiential verification. Third, experiential verification through practice. Here lies one of the most fascinating aspects for Western audiences. The link between lucid dreaming and the post-mortem bardo. In Tibetan thought, life, dreams, and the intermediate state are all projections of the mind. Lucid dreaming, the awareness that one is dreaming, allows a practitioner to recognize and navigate these mental projections consciously. By practicing lucid dreams, one learns not to fear threatening scenarios in dreams. Similarly, in the bardo, terrifying visions arise from one's own mind. The key is to recognize them as projections. If one can maintain awareness in this dreamlike state, liberation becomes possible. Falling asleep in this sense is a microcosm of dying. Maintaining awareness during sleep is practice for the ultimate transition. The text emphasizes, do not simply believe. See for yourself that the mind continues even at the moment of death. By observing consciousness directly, one realizes that awareness persists as a subtle wind in the heart, eventually transforming into clear light consciousness. This is the moment when the practitioner perceives the unity of self and cosmos. The Bardo Thodol explains, awareness is neither wet by water nor burnt by fire. It is not buried in earth nor scattered by wind. It is fundamentally light, and the moment you recognize it, liberation is achieved. The phenomenology of the second-day colors of the divine. On the second day after death, the soul experiences a reality entirely constructed by the mind. The deceased encounters the five lights: blue, golden, red, white, and green. Each represents an aspect of wisdom, compassion, passion, purity, and balance. Yet the soul often fears these lights, for they reveal unfiltered truths about one's desires, attachments, and past actions. The blue light embodies the wisdom of Dharmakaya. Gold reflects compassionate action. Red illuminates passion and love. White represents pure consciousness. Green signifies the power of equilibrium and activity. Here we see a profound philosophical lesson. Human beings instinctively avoid truth when it exposes their illusions. The lights are not external deities, but reflections of the mind's inner realities. Encountering them is both a psychological and spiritual challenge, a confrontation with the self, stripped of comforting illusions. Through this lens, the Tibetan Book of the Dead guides us. Death is not an end, but a mirror of consciousness. The post-mortem journey becomes an invitation to recognize the mind's projections, to confront them with awareness, and ultimately to awaken to the timeless flow of awareness that underlies all existence. The Bardo Thodol is more than a religious scripture. It is a philosophical and psychological manual, demonstrating that consciousness persists through one, logical reasoning showing the immaterial nature of awareness. 2, phenomenological observation depicting the post-mortem experience as a map of consciousness. 3, experiential verification through lucid dreaming and meditative practice. It is both an invitation and a challenge to see, to experience, and to understand that consciousness is not confined to the body, and that the ultimate truths of life and death are accessible through direct insight. If this exploration of consciousness, death, and the mind has sparked curiosity, subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell. Together, we will continue walking the path toward understanding the luminous nature of awareness and the profound mysteries that lie beyond the threshold of life. On this channel, we explore the profound mysteries of human consciousness, death, and the realms that lie beyond, blending philosophy, psychology, and mystical insight. Today, we delve deeper into the Tibetan Book of the Dead, focusing on the Chonyi Bardo, the intermediate state of phenomena, which unfolds on the second day after death. Earlier, we discussed how the Bardo Thodol asserts that consciousness does not vanish with the physical body. It does so through a sophisticated three-step approach. First, logical, reasoning; second, phenomenological evidence; and third, validation, through disciplined practice. Let us now continue from that foundation and explore how this philosophy is intimately tied to practical experience and consciousness training. Logical reasoning revisited. As we have seen, consciousness, or she's, is defined as awareness neither arises nor ceases. While it interacts with matter, it is not matter itself. In other words, consciousness is fundamentally relational, existing in dependence on causes and conditions, yet not identical to the objects it perceives. The death of the body does not annihilate awareness. It merely removes the sensory apparatus that perceives the physical world. Consciousness continues, transforming its focus, but never truly ceasing. This philosophical reasoning sets the stage for the phenomenological and experiential aspects that follow, connecting logically to the practices that Tibetan meditators have used for centuries. From logic to experience consciousness in practice. Here, the Tibetan Book of the Dead invites us to shift from intellectual understanding to lived experience. Tibetan practitioners employ dream yoga and Shikai Bardo yoga to directly observe consciousness, independent of the body. Through these practices, one discovers that the mind's activity persists, even when sensory input ceases. This leads us to a remarkable principle. Lucid dreaming is a microcosm of death itself. In a lucid dream, you are aware that you are dreaming, and you can navigate the dream consciously. Similarly, in the Bardo state, the deceased encounters visions both peaceful and terrifying that are projections of their own mind. The key is awareness. By recognizing that these apparitions are mental projections, fear is dissolved and liberation becomes possible. The text explains this with clarity. Do not merely believe. Observe directly that the mind continues even at the moment of death. Lucid dreaming, then, is not simply a tool for mental exploration during life. It is preparation for the ultimate transition, allowing one to remain conscious as the body dissolves and the intermediate state begins. The Bardo is, in essence, a dream of consciousness, a realm where the mind projects karmic patterns as vivid experiences. Those who train in lucid awareness are able to witness these projections without attachment, recognizing them for what they are, phenomena arising from the mind itself, the continuity of consciousness and the mind's wind. The Bardo Thodol describes consciousness as a subtle wind remaining in the heart, even as the body ceases its functions. This mind's wind eventually transforms into clear light consciousness, a state of pure awareness where the practitioner experiences unity with the universe. It is here that the teachings bridge philosophy, psychology, and mystical insight. Consciousness is not merely a product of the brain, but a fundamental aspect of existence itself, flowing through the cosmos. The text offers a vivid description of this truth. Awareness is neither wet by water nor burnt by fire. It is not buried in earth nor scattered by wind. It is fundamentally luminous, and the moment you recognize it, liberation is achieved. This is no abstract metaphor. It is a precise statement about the nature of consciousness as experienced through disciplined practice, validated in the phenomenology of both dream and death. Tibetan practitioners understand that even when the body dies, awareness continues, encountering manifestations of one's own mind, yet remaining untouched by fear or attachment if recognized clearly. lucid awareness as a bridge between life and death. By training in lucid dreaming, one learns to discern illusion from reality, a skill directly applicable to navigating the Bardo. Life itself, with its constant flux and impermanence, can be approached as a series of dreamlike projections. Recognizing this allows one to confront mortality without fear, and to navigate the inner landscape of mind with clarity. The Bardo Thodol emphasizes experiential validation over mere belief. Even though your breath has ceased, does the thought, "I still exist," not arise? That is awareness. That is enlightenment. That is your true nature. This profound insight demonstrates that consciousness is not annihilated by death, but continues as subtle awareness, capable of interacting with the projections of the mind. Through disciplined practice, one can perceive these states directly, experiencing the continuity of consciousness as it shifts from the physical to the intermediate realm. In integrating logical reasoning, phenomenological evidence, and meditative practice, the Tibetan Book of the Dead teaches a practical, experiential philosophy. Consciousness endures beyond the cessation of the body. The second day after death, the Chonyi Bardo, is a crucial stage where the soul encounters the mind-made reality, a reflection of karmic patterns, vivid yet ultimately unreal. By training awareness through lucid dreaming, we can approach this experience with clarity, recognizing the mind's projections without attachment or fear. In essence, the text is a guide to understanding the imperishable nature of consciousness, a bridge between life and death, and a manual for inner transformation. If you found this exploration of consciousness and the intermediate state illuminating, subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell. Together we will continue our journey into the luminous and boundless nature of awareness, exploring the mysteries that lie beyond the threshold of life. Welcome back, dear viewers. On this channel we continue our exploration of consciousness, death, and the subtle realms that unfold beyond our physical existence. Today we journey further into the profound teachings of the Tibetan Book of the Dead, focusing on the Chonyi Bardo, the intermediate state of phenomena, the second stage of post-death experience. If you haven't yet, please subscribe and turn on notifications as we explore the luminous nature of awareness together. Previously, we discussed how the Bardo Thodol integrates philosophical reasoning, phenomenological observation, and disciplined practice to demonstrate that consciousness does not vanish at death. Logic informs us that awareness, or she's, is not a mere byproduct of the brain, nor does it arise or cease in the same way that physical phenomena do. Even as the body dissolves, the mind's activity persists, perceiving, reflecting, and interacting with the subtle projections of past actions and karmic patterns. We then examined how this continuity is verified through experiential practice, particularly lucid dreaming, dream yoga, and death meditation, Chikai Bardo yoga. By cultivating the ability to recognize dream states as projections of the mind, Tibetan practitioners train themselves to navigate the Bardo, consciously avoiding fear, attachment, or confusion. In other words, life itself becomes a rehearsal for the ultimate transition, and the skills honed in dreams are directly transferable to the experience of post-death consciousness. Now, let us take the next step, the profound insights embedded in the second day of the Bardo, as described in paragraph 5. On this day, the deceased enters a stage where the soul actively experiences the reality generated by the mind itself, a landscape shaped by karmic impressions and emotional residues. The Chonyi Bardo is thus not merely a passive state. It is a vivid encounter with one's own consciousness, a dreamlike projection in which the mind both creates and witnesses its own illusions. The Bardo Thodol conveys a crucial philosophical principle here, using the Sanskrit maxim Sita Shakti Pratibimba, Maya Artham Anasraya in essence. All phenomena are projections of mind, appearing real yet devoid of inherent existence. In the text, subscribe and join us on this journey into the luminous nature of consciousness, beyond life and death. As we continue our exploration of the second day of the Bardo, we encounter the radiant spectrum of light that the Tibetan Book of the Dead describes with profound philosophical depth. These are not mere visual phenomena, but the very manifestations of the mind's ultimate truth. Each color, each beam carries a symbolic resonance, an invitation to confront the deepest aspects of our consciousness. First, the deep blue light, the light of Dharmakaya, the wisdom of emptiness shunyata. The first light that the deceased encounters is a profound, deep blue brilliance that stretches infinitely across the sky. This is the light of Vairocana, representing the essence of the universe itself, Dharmakaya. Unlike any earthly form, this blue transcends boundaries, symbolizing emptiness, infinite freedom, and detachment from clinging. It is a light without limits, the pure reflection of what lies beyond the illusory self. Yet the soul often recoils in fear. The infinite blue challenges the very notion of I, our habitual sense of self, the egoic boundary that defines our existence. To confront this limitless sky is to confront the dissolution of the self, as one knows it. Many, unprepared for such radical truth, turn away from this light, retreating into darkness, seeking the familiar comfort of illusion. This encounter is a philosophical revelation, the recognition that ultimate freedom can be both awe-inspiring and terrifying. Second, the golden light, the light of compassion and equality. The next illumination the soul perceives is golden, warm, and radiant. This is the light of Ratnasambhava, the Buddha of giving and generosity, who shines impartially upon all beings. Golden light symbolizes inner abundance, the practice of compassion, and the realization that all life shares the same source. It is the light of universal love, a profound wisdom that acknowledges the equality and dignity of every sentient being. Yet, for a soul still bound by dualistic thinking, distinguishing self from other, this light can be blinding. The golden brilliance is too pure, too unconditional for those who cling to separation and attachment. The soul may experience discomfort or fear, not from malice, but from the overwhelming realization that love and compassion are not rewards to earn, but the very nature of reality itself. Philosophically, this represents the challenge of ethical and moral awakening. The soul must learn to receive and reflect unconditional love, even when it feels foreign or uncomfortable. Third, the red. Light the light of passionate love, vitality, and discriminating wisdom. The red light is the luminous energy of Amitabha, the Buddha of infinite light. This is the fire of love, the warmth of life, the vivid pulse of conscious energy. Red symbolizes passion, devotion, and the vital force that animates living beings. It is a flame that can either purify or consume. Uncontrolled, it becomes the fire of desire and attachment guided by wisdom. It transforms into compassionate action and boundless love. The Tibetan Book of the Dead teaches us, the fire of fear leads to hell, the fire of love leads to bliss. This principle reveals the essential psychological insight that our emotional energy, if guided by awareness and insight, can become the vehicle for liberation. The red light is not merely a color to behold, it is an invitation to integrate passion with discernment, transforming raw desire into enlightened compassion. Integrating the color's philosophical reflection. Together, the blue, golden, and red lights illustrate a profound metaphysical and psychological map. The blue light invites detachment and recognition of the infinite. The golden light teaches the equality of all beings and the practice of pure compassion. The red light transforms our emotional and motivational energy into wisdom-infused love. These luminous experiences are not external phenomena, but projections of the mind itself, guiding the soul toward liberation by reflecting the truth that consciousness is continuous, flexible, and capable of profound self-awareness. For the living, these teachings offer equally valuable insight. The encounter with the Bardo lights mirrors the challenges of life itself. When faced with uncertainty, loss, or the dissolution of familiar patterns, we may feel fear, resistance, or clinging. Yet, the path of awareness asks us to recognize these projections, to see them as reflections of the mind, and to cultivate freedom, compassion, and integrated passion in our daily lives. By learning to face these inner lights consciously, we prepare not only for the inevitable transition of death, but for a deeper understanding of our own mind and its luminous potential. In conclusion, the first three colors encountered on the second day of the Bardo provide a vivid philosophical, psychological, and spiritual map. Blue for infinite wisdom and emptiness, gold for compassionate equality, and red for disciplined passion. Each challenges the soul to recognize its own projections and attachments, and each offers the potential for liberation if perceived with clarity and awareness. Subscribe now to continue this exploration into consciousness, beyond life, and walk with us as we uncover the luminous, transformative nature of mind, where every color, every light is a doorway to profound insight and awakening. Subscribe and join us as we explore the luminous nature of consciousness and the profound teachings of the Bardo Thodol. As we have already navigated the first three colors, the deep blue of Dharmakaya, the golden light of compassion, and the red flame of passionate love, we now move to the fourth and fifth lights, white and green. These colors, the Tibetan Book of the Dead explains, are not mere visual phenomena, but profound symbols of the mind's ultimate capacities, guiding the soul toward clarity, equilibrium, and liberation. Fourth, the white light, the light of pure consciousness and mirror-like wisdom. The white light is associated with Akshobhya, the Buddha of mirror-like wisdom, Mahaprabhasa Prajna. This light reflects all phenomena as they truly are, just as a mirror reflects its surroundings, yet remains untouched and unwavering. It is the illumination of pure consciousness, revealing the essence of one's original nature, the true face of the mind. Philosophically, it is the integration of all colors, the cessation of differentiation, and the emergence of true equanimity. Yet this light, though radiant and sublime, can be profoundly intimidating. The white light confronts the soul with the dissolution of ego, the vanishing of the self as it is conventionally understood. Many souls shrink from this brilliance, fearing the disappearance of the boundaries that define them. It is precisely at this threshold where the self risks dissolving into pure awareness that true enlightenment is tested. The encounter with the white light is a profound metaphysical challenge to recognize oneself beyond the constructs of identity, and to embrace the unconditioned nature of consciousness without fear. From a psychological perspective, this confrontation mirrors the journey of self-realization in life. Just as we must confront the illusions and projections of our ego to grow spiritually, the soul in the Bardo must recognize the white light not as something external to fear, but as the ultimate reflection of its own mind. The white light is the mind's unclouded clarity, a luminous space where judgment, attachment, and delusion dissolve, leaving only pure awareness. Fifth, the green light, the light of action, balance, and practical wisdom. Finally, the green light represents Amoghasiddhi, the Buddha of accomplishment, whose illumination embodies harmony, balanced action, and the realization of wisdom through practice. Green is the color of nature, life, and equilibrium. This light teaches that enlightenment is not solely a matter of understanding, but of living and manifesting wisdom in action. Knowledge alone is insufficient. It must be integrated into behavior, aligned with ethical responsibility, and expressed through compassionate deeds. The green light symbolizes the purifying power of karma and the harmony of the mind in action. When the soul receives and integrates this light, it transcends the cycles of rebirth and returns no longer to ignorance. Philosophically, the green light reminds us that consciousness is not passive. True liberation requires active engagement with reality, where insight and action merge to produce ethical, compassionate, and enlightened living. The five lights, the mirror of the mind. Taken together, these five lights, blue, gold, red, white, and green, are not divine emanations but reflections of the mind itself. Blue represents the infinite nature of emptiness, gold, the universal principle of compassion, red, the transformative power of passion, white, pure consciousness and equanimity, green, the wisdom of action and balance. The Tibetan Book of the Dead emphasizes, do not fear these lights. They are not external deities, but the true nature of your own mind. This understanding carries profound implications for life as well as death. By engaging with these lights during the Bardo, the soul is presented with the opportunity to recognize its own projections, attachments, and innate potential. Similarly, in our waking life, these symbolic lights remind us to face our own inner truths, embrace compassion, cultivate passion with wisdom, achieve equanimity, and translate insight into ethical action. In essence, the Bardo is a profound mirror, showing us that the luminous potential of consciousness is always present, waiting to be realized. The philosophical insight here is transformative. Understanding the lights of death is inseparable from understanding the lights within life. The five colors awaken not in some distant afterlife alone, but within our minds as we practice awareness, compassion, discernment, and ethical engagement. Each color is both a warning and an invitation, challenging the soul and ourselves to recognize that consciousness is continuous, luminous, and ultimately our own. Subscribe and click the notification bell to continue exploring these profound truths of mind, consciousness, and the luminous nature of existence. Join us as we uncover how the teachings of the Bardo, Thodol, illuminate the path to self-realization, both in life and beyond. By witnessing the lights, we are reminded that awakening begins not after death, but here and now within the vibrant, luminous canvas of our own consciousness. Before we begin, subscribe and click the bell to journey with us into the luminous depths of consciousness and the profound mysteries of the Bardo. As we have seen, the soul in the Bardo encounters five distinct lights: blue, gold, red, white, and green, each revealing a facet of the mind's nature and guiding the consciousness through stages of awakening. Yet, on the second day after death, a fascinating phenomenon occurs. The lights transcend religious, cultural, and personal boundaries. Regardless of faith or belief, the light is one. This light, experienced by the deceased, is not exclusive to any single tradition. For a Buddhist, it may appear as the radiant bodhisattvas of compassion. For a Christian, it may manifest as the gentle smile of the Virgin Mary. For a Muslim, as the divine illumination of Nur Allah, and even for an atheist, it may emerge as the profound judgment of one's own conscience. Though the forms differ, the essence is the same. The light reflects the inner truth of consciousness itself. Psychologists and parapsychologists describe this as the conscious projection. Field the principle that immediately after death, the mind projects a reality shaped by beliefs, memories, and emotional energies. The beings or lights encountered are not external deities, but manifestations of one's self-divinity, externalized from the inner mind. In other words, while the faces of the divine appear diverse, their core is singular. This is the central teaching of the Tibetan Book of the Dead. Though religions differ, the light is one. It is a profound reminder that the ultimate reality encountered at the edge of death is not shaped by external dogma, but by the consciousness itself. Interestingly, modern science has observed parallel phenomena. Researchers at the University of Virginia reported that 10–20% of people experiencing near-death experiences, NDEs, describe encounters with a brilliant light and a presence of profound significance. This occurs regardless of faith or worldview. The light is not merely a neurological artifact. It may signify consciousness operating beyond the physical brain, reflecting truth back upon itself in its final moments. In other words, the light is the mind's ultimate mirror, revealing the self with unflinching clarity. Yet, the second day in the Bardo is not only a meeting with luminous divinity, it also brings confrontation with darkness. Souls may perceive wrathful deities, fearsome beings, or terrifying visions. However, these are not external threats. They are projections of one's own mind, shaped by fear, attachment, and unresolved guilt. Carl Jung referred to this as the shadow self, the part of the psyche we deny and repress, now manifesting as formidable entities in the Bardos. These figures, skeletal hands, blazing eyes, or fiery forms, are not punishers from beyond, but the embodiment of the deceased's own unresolved anger, attachments, and self-deception. The soul may attempt to flee, but the gravitational pull of clinging attachments to family, possessions, reputation, or love holds it back. This is the very mechanism of samsara, the cycle of birth and death, which ensnares consciousness in recurring patterns of desire and fear. Only by recognizing these forces and facing them without aversion or denial can the soul progress toward liberation. On this second day, at the edge of fear and despair, a remarkable realization emerges. The light and darkness, the wrathful and compassionate figures, are all projections of the mind itself. This awakening, called wisdom through fear in the Tibetan Book of the Dead, is the profound moment when the soul comprehends the illusory, yet deeply instructive nature of all phenomena. By facing fear without attachment, the deceased encounters the ultimate truth, the void, shunyata, where all forms arise and pass away, and yet the essence of consciousness persists, luminous and free. This insight carries deep implications for the living as well. It teaches that life itself is a continuous engagement with projections of the mind, that attachments and fears create personal shadows, and that recognizing their true nature is essential for wisdom and freedom. By observing these phenomena as symbolic, experiential, and psychologically real, we glimpse the universality of consciousness, transcending cultural, religious, and personal boundaries. In conclusion, the second day in the Bardo is not merely a mystical journey of a deceased soul. It is a mirror, reflecting the deepest truths of the mind, illustrating that liberation is possible when one faces both light and shadow without clinging or aversion. The Tibetan Book of the Dead teaches us that every light, every dark figure, every emotion encountered is an intimate reflection of our own consciousness. Understanding this, we recognize that enlightenment begins not after death, but here and now in the living awareness of the mind's luminous nature. Subscribe and hit the notification bell to continue exploring the profound journey of consciousness, the mysteries of the mind, and the luminous path that the Bardo reveals. Witnessing the interplay of light and shadow, we are invited to awaken, to live fully, and to understand that the ultimate truth, though experienced at the edge of death, is always present within us, waiting to illuminate our lives. Before we dive in, subscribe and click the bell to join a journey into the deepest truths of consciousness and fear. What do we do when confronted by fear? Do we run? Do we close our eyes, hoping it will vanish? Or perhaps, do we deny its existence altogether? These are instinctive reactions, and they reveal much about the mind we inhabit. Yet the Tibetan Book of the Dead offers a radically different perspective. It says plainly enlightenment arises only in the midst of fear. At the threshold of death, the soul encounters both light and darkness, divine radiance and terrifying shadows. And yet, astonishingly, all of these manifestations, the blazing lights, the wrathful deities, even the figures that seem to demand judgment, are not external forces. They are projections of the mind itself, shadows conjured by the very consciousness that now seeks liberation. From a psychological standpoint, what the deceased faces is a dramatic reflection of the repressed self. Freud might call it the unveiling of the unconscious, where guilt, anger, regret, and fear accumulated over a lifetime take symbolic form. On the precipice of death, as the boundary between conscious and unconscious dissolves, these inner shadows manifest vividly, almost tangibly, confronting the soul with the totality of its unacknowledged emotions. Carl Jung described this phenomenon as the soul's journey toward integration. He called it the process of confronting the self-psychological unification that can only occur when one faces the darker, hidden aspects of the psyche. In the language of the Bardo, this confrontation is not merely a trial, it is the path to profound self-realization. Enlightenment in fear does not mean eliminating fear, but rather moving through it, letting it reveal the hidden truths of the mind, and guiding the soul toward wholeness. The spiritual perspective echoes this psychological insight. In the moments immediately following death, the soul remains tethered to memories and attachments of the physical world. Houses, possessions, relationships, and unfulfilled desires manifest as light and shadow, sometimes welcoming, sometimes terrifying. This is the soul's projection field, the consciousness reflecting upon itself. When the soul recognizes that these visions are not external punishments, but mirrors of its own creation, fear loses its dominion. The soul returns to its intrinsic light, the innate clarity of consciousness that is neither born nor destroyed. At this moment, the soul experiences the essence of emptiness, shunyata, the profound truth that all phenomena, while seemingly real, are ultimately projections of mind. Fear becomes a doorway, a teacher rather than an enemy. The terror of these visions is not meant to punish but to awaken. Only by daring to look directly at the darkest shadows within can the soul achieve liberation. This is the ultimate lesson of the Tibetan Bardo. Fear is the mirror through which the soul recognizes itself. The implications extend beyond death. In life, too, the fears that paralyze us are rarely external threats. They are the parts of ourselves we have yet to acknowledge, the doubts, regrets, and inner conflicts that we avoid at all costs. Life constantly presents these shadows in the form of challenges, losses, or moments of uncertainty. And just as in the Bardo, we have a choice: flee, deny, or confront. Only by standing firm, by facing what terrifies us within, do we awaken to our fullest potential. Consider this the very same principle that guides a soul through death, applies to our everyday living. When you confront failure, loss, or even your own limitations without turning away, you are training the mind to recognize the truth behind appearances. Fear is the veil that separates illusion from reality. The moment you meet it without avoidance, a profound clarity arises. In this clarity, you see that the anxieties, the shadows, and even the imagined threats are all expressions of consciousness itself. They are your own mind, reflecting back at you, and through this reflection you awaken. The Tibetan Book of the Dead teaches us that the final liberating moment is not a distant, mystical experience. It is rooted in courage. It is the courage to witness fear, to face the echoes of our deepest regrets, and to recognize that even the most terrifying visions are temporary constructs of mind. In doing so, the soul transcends attachment, ego, and the illusion of permanence. It enters a state of liberated awareness, where the duality of fear and light dissolves, revealing the indivisible truth. Everything is both illusion and reality at once. In essence, enlightenment in fear is an invitation to confront the most intimate and concealed aspects of self. The dark, the unknown, the other within, these are not enemies, but teachers guiding the soul toward clarity. To confront them is to realize that the boundaries between life and death, light and shadow, are ultimately constructs of consciousness. True awakening arises not from comfort or safety, but from courage to meet fear, understand it, and integrate it. So, whether in the final moments of life or the daily challenges we face, fear is not a signal to escape, but a gateway to understanding. The darkness and terror are mirrors, reflecting truths that remain hidden until we look directly. When we embrace this, we understand that the external world, the inner world, and even the mysteries of life and death are all interwoven through consciousness. The Bardo reminds us fear is not the end. It is the beginning of profound insight, the very doorway to self-realization. And just as the soul faces its own projections after death, so too can we navigate the illusions and shadows of life, discovering the luminous, eternal core of consciousness within ourselves. If this resonates with you, subscribe and turn on notifications so we can continue exploring the journey of mind, consciousness, and the luminous truths that lie beyond fear. Fear, therefore, is not an obstacle. It is the mechanism of revelation. When the soul encounters these frightening visions, wrathful deities, chaotic shadows, blazing lights, it initially resists. But this very resistance catalyzes recognition. The horrifying images are not threats from external divinities. They are the reflections of the soul itself, the cumulative projections of attachment, desire, guilt, and unprocessed emotion. This confrontation strips away illusions and reveals the immutable core of consciousness. Consider the broader philosophical implications. In life, fear functions similarly. We cling to identities, roles, possessions, and beliefs, building walls around ourselves. Only when circumstances confront us with the inevitability of change, loss, or mortality do we begin to awaken. Fear is the stimulus that shakes the ego and reveals the deeper nature of the mind. Just as the Bardo uses fear to dissolve attachments, life uses challenges, uncertainty, and mortality to illuminate reality. The Tibetan Book of the Dead insists that enlightenment cannot be spoken into existence. Words alone are powerless to awaken a consciousness whose foundation the ego is dissolving. Only direct experience, often mediated through fear, can catalyze true understanding. This is a profound lesson not merely for the soul after death, but for anyone seeking wisdom in life. Awakening is a process of encountering the unknown, confronting the shadows within, and transcending the familiar self. Thus, fear is both the crucible and the guide. It is the instrument through which the soul is forced to confront itself, and paradoxically through which liberation is attained. It is not cruelty, it is precision. It is the ultimate pedagogical tool of consciousness. In the Bardo, fear becomes the light that cannot be ignored, revealing truth with a clarity that gentle instruction could never achieve. So, as we contemplate mortality, consciousness, and the process of awakening, let us reconsider our understanding of fear. Fear is not an enemy to be avoided, but a teacher to be embraced. It is the mirror reflecting the boundaries of the ego, and through it, we are guided to the realization that the self, in its ultimate sense, is boundless, luminous, and free. If this exploration resonates with you, subscribe and turn on notifications. Together, we will continue to navigate the mysteries of consciousness, fear, and the luminous wisdom that emerges when we face the unknown. In our previous discussion, we explored how the soul encounters fear at the threshold of death, how the ego dissolves, and how terror becomes the vehicle through which consciousness realizes its true nature. We examined the principle of Po-Wei-Ju, the wisdom that emerges from fear, and how this seemingly harsh confrontation is, paradoxically, a profound act of guidance rather than punishment. Now let us examine this principle further. Po-Wei-Ju is not merely a concept or an abstract teaching. It is a lived experience of consciousness. It represents the insight that allows the mind to confront the illusions and projections it has created without succumbing to them, even in moments of extreme fear. This is the essential teaching of the Bardo. Fear is not the enemy. It is the instrument by which the ego is dismantled and the self is revealed. Consider this carefully. In life, the ego is comforted by words, rational explanations, and familiar routines. These reassurances give the mind a false sense of security. But death, or any situation that confronts us with the ultimate unknown, strips away all such illusions. Only when the familiar structures of identity, memory, and perception collapse does consciousness encounter itself in its purest, unmediated form. Fear, then, is not inflicted to punish. It is the shock therapy of the mind. It shatters the shell of the ego, revealing that even as the personal self dissolves, awareness persists. Imagine the moment the soul stands before the luminous forms, the terrifying apparitions, the blazing energies of the Bardo. Every instinct resists, every attachment grips. Yet in that crucible of fear, the soul begins to recognize the truth. These forms are not external gods or demons. They are reflections, projections of the mind itself. Each horror, each shadow is a mirror, revealing the aspects of ourselves that we have denied, suppressed, or ignored throughout life. This recognition is the essence of Po-Wei-Ju. It is the ability to see through the hallucinations of fear, to perceive their underlying reality, and to understand that consciousness itself is untouched by the illusions it produces. The soul realizes that terror is not destruction, it is illumination. Fear becomes the threshold, and beyond it lies awakening. In life, the same principle applies. We fear change, loss, judgment, failure, not the external circumstances themselves, but the confrontation with parts of ourselves we have refused to acknowledge. Fear, therefore, is both mirror and teacher. It reveals the hidden self, the layers of attachment, and the illusions of permanence. By embracing fear instead of fleeing from it, we encounter a truth that cannot be conveyed by words alone, that the self, though impermanent, is but a surface overlying a vast, luminous consciousness that endures beyond the ego. Returning to the moment of death, Consider the imagery of the Bardo, the soul confronted with terrifying deities. Blazing lights and shadowy forms experiences a profound choice. It may resist, retreat, and cling to familiar identities, or it may, through courage, confront the fear, perceive the projections for what they are, and pass through the crucible of awareness. This is the teaching of Po-Wei-Zhi, that fear, once transcended, transforms into wisdom, insight, and liberation. Yet even after the ego dissolves, the journey is not complete. Consciousness must integrate the insight gained from fear. It must recognize that all projections, light, shadow, wrathful deities, or compassionate forms are part of its own mind. Every terrifying apparition, every dazzling brilliance is the mirror of inner reality. Through this integration, the soul attains equilibrium, understanding that the ultimate truth transcends all dualities, existence and non-existence, fear and love, life and death. This understanding carries profound implications for life itself. Every fear we face, every shadow we encounter, is an invitation to awaken. Fear is not a punishment, it is a passage, a guide that reveals the contours of consciousness. To avoid fear is to remain in illusion. To confront it is to discover the enduring, luminous nature of the mind. So, as we reflect on these teachings, let us internalize the wisdom of the Bardo. Fear is not the darkness outside of us. It is the mirror of our unacknowledged self, the teacher that catalyzes transformation. In moments of fear, whether in life or at the threshold of death, we are offered the opportunity to awaken to a deeper understanding, to recognize the enduring light within, and to transcend the limitations of the ego. Finally, consider this: the soul that passes through fear, unshaken, discovers that the ultimate truth is not punishment, not suffering, but revelation. The collapse of self becomes the illumination of consciousness. The terrifying visions of the Bardo are nothing more than reflections, and in seeing them clearly, the soul is liberated. This is the final teaching, that the journey of fear, guided by insight, leads to the radiant understanding of what it truly means to exist. If you wish to continue exploring the mysteries of consciousness, fear, and the luminous wisdom of the soul, subscribe and turn on notifications. Together we will witness the unfolding of inner light and traverse the profound landscapes of life, death, and awakening. Let us journey to the threshold of understanding, where fear becomes the teacher and the soul awakens. In the next session, we will explore the third day of the Bardo, when the wrathful deities are fully revealed, and the soul once again confronts the choices before it. This is where the final tests of courage, insight, and detachment occur, the moment when the soul must navigate its deepest fears to step into true liberation. Subscribe, stay with us, and awaken your inner light as we continue this profound journey together.
Ladies and gentlemen, before you continue watching this lecture, I invite you to pause for a moment and reflect. History, when observed honestly, is not a tale of linear progress. It is a record of recurring tragedies. Again and again we encounter the same patterns: political powers that trample the weak, leaders who ignite wars for personal gain, and ordinary individuals who, unable to master their anger, leave behind wounds that never fully heal. These figures often believe themselves to be standing at the pinnacle of the world, secure, untouchable, justified. Yet what they fail to recognize is that the very sparks of suffering they cast outward eventually return to them as an inescapable fire. In the Tibetan Book of the Dead, known traditionally as the Bardo, Todol, we find a haunting line: "The karma you have created follows you like a shadow. For many Western readers, this sentence may sound mystical or otherworldly, as though it refers only to some distant afterlife. But that interpretation misses the deeper point. This is not merely a statement about what happens after death. It is a description of a law that operates here and now, within the human mind at every moment of conscious life. Anger, greed, obsession, and ignorance become flames that consume us from the inside. Compassion, goodwill, restraint, and insight, by contrast, become sources of illumination, quiet lights that guide our actions even in darkness. Heaven and hell, according to this view, are not remote destinations hidden beyond the stars. They are psychological and ethical realities that open and close within us, moment by moment. The doors are never locked. We are opening them constantly, often without realizing it. This lecture, therefore, is a story about doors. Not only the doors we imagine after death, but the thresholds we cross repeatedly throughout our lives. In the language of the Tibetan Book of the Dead, this threshold is called Bardo, the Bardo of becoming. It is the final stage in the journey of consciousness, the moment when one life releases its grip and the next form of existence begins to take shape. Traditionally, the text describes a powerful scene occurring on the third day after death. The consciousness of the deceased encounters a mirror-like revelation of its own actions. Nothing is hidden. Every intention, every decision, every harm inflicted or mercy offered is reflected back with absolute clarity. There is no external judge in this moment. There is only recognition. In that world, anger becomes fire, compassion becomes light, and the so-called mirror of truth speaks without accusation, without comfort, stating only what is. Those who have accumulated harmful actions will fall into the lower realms. Those who have cultivated wholesome actions will be drawn toward favorable realms. This brings us to the final and third stage of the Tibetan Book of the Dead, Bardo, the threshold of rebirth. When we connect this teaching to a classical Buddhist formulation, evil actions lead to the three lower paths. Good actions give rise to higher realms, the core of Buddhist thought on rebirth and moral causality becomes unmistakably clear. Let us examine this principle more closely. The phrase, often translated as evil actions, fall into the three lower realms, refers to the consequences of harmful deeds committed through body, speech, and mind. These consequences are symbolized as three modes of existence, collectively known as the three lower realms. First is the hell realm. This is not merely a place of punishment imposed by a deity. It represents the psychological reality of extreme hatred, cruelty, and violence. Here, suffering is intense and overwhelming, mirroring the weight of destructive intentions cultivated during life. Second is the hungry ghost realm. This realm is defined by insatiable craving. Those dominated by greed, miserliness, and chronic dissatisfaction experience a world of endless hunger and thirst, always desiring, never fulfilled. Third is the animal realm. This realm reflects ignorance and confusion. It is governed by fear, instinct, and survival at any cost. In this state, beings live within a constant cycle of predation and vulnerability, lacking the reflective awareness necessary for ethical growth. In contrast, the teaching of good actions give rise to favorable realms, describes the three higher realms known in Buddhist thought as the three fortunate paths. The heavenly realm represents lives shaped by generosity, ethical conduct, and accumulated merit. It is a state of pleasure and ease, yet not a final liberation. The human realm occupies a unique position. It contains both suffering and joy, limitation and possibility. Precisely because of this balance, it is considered the most valuable realm for awakening. Only here is there sufficient awareness and struggle to make liberation attainable. The Asura realm, often translated as the realm of demigods, is marked by strength and accomplishment, but also by persistent anger and rivalry. These beings possess virtue, yet remain trapped in conflict, unable to rest in peace. At this point, an uncomfortable question arises, one that resonates deeply with modern sensibilities. Many cultures express the belief that no matter how miserable life may be, it is still better than death. But is this truly so? Is mere survival always preferable to transformation? Or is this belief itself an avoidance of deeper responsibility? In the next lecture, we will explore this question in greater depth. For now, return with me to Sidpa Bardo. In this final threshold, the Tibetan Book of the Dead offers a stark warning. Your actions determine your next existence. No fear, no faith, no savior can take your place. Only your mind and your conduct illuminate your path. This statement is radical in its moral clarity. It denies external rescue. It denies cosmic favoritism. It insists that responsibility cannot be outsourced, not to gods, not to institutions, not to belief systems. The future emerges from what has already been cultivated within. Before concluding, I invite you to perform a brief thought experiment. Close your eyes and imagine a world in which everything familiar has vanished. There is no body, no time, no name, no social identity. Only awareness remains, watching, remembering, responding. In such a condition, what would remain of you? What habits of mind would surface? What fears, what attachments, what values would shape your next step? This is the question Sidpa Bardo asks of us, not after death, but now. Today, we have opened the final gate. Described in the Tibetan Book of the Dead, the gate of becoming. It is the threshold where karma takes form, where intention crystallizes into destiny. Whether understood literally or symbolically, its message is unmistakable. The worlds we fear and the worlds we hope for are not waiting elsewhere. They are being built moment by moment within us. This story is not merely about a world that awaits us after death. It is also about an inner passage that every one of us crosses daily, often without noticing. In that sense, the Bardo is not somewhere else. It is here. It is the invisible threshold within our own consciousness, the moment between impulse and action, between reaction and responsibility. Each time we cross that inner threshold, what appears before us, sometimes as terrifying gods, sometimes as grotesque monsters, is nothing other than our own karma. And when we fail to recognize it as such, we are condemned not by a divine judge, but by repetition itself. We circle once again through the same patterns of suffering, the same emotional reflexes, the same unresolved conflicts. This, in its most profound sense, is the cycle of rebirth. If you stay with me until the end of this lecture, you may discover something unexpected, not a deeper fear of death, but a clearer vision of the source of life itself. And if this reflection resonates with you, I invite you to support the channel by subscribing and liking the video. Perhaps a single conscious click performed with awareness, can become a small spark of awakening, even in this very life. Now let us ask a fundamental question. What does Sidpa Bardo actually mean? In Tibetan Buddhism, the word Bardo literally means an intermediate state. It refers to the gap between one condition and another, between life and death, between death and the next existence, and most importantly, for us, between one moment of consciousness and the next. Sidpa Bardo is the final of these intermediate states. It is the phase in which the deceased consciousness approaches the doorway of rebirth. Here, karma no longer remains abstract or hidden. It takes form. It acquires shape, sound, and emotional force. For this reason, Sidpa Bardo is often described as the threshold of causality. Causality, in Buddhist philosophy, does not mean blind fate. It means that actions of body, speech, and mind condition the quality of future experience. Every act of kindness and every act of cruelty, every honest word and every deliberate lie leaves a trace. At Sidpa Bardo, these traces are illuminated by what the text calls the light of truth. Under this light, past actions transform into vivid appearances. They may emerge as wrathful deities or peaceful ones, as celestial harmonies, or as cries of anguish from the depths. What appears depends not on external judgment, but on internal accumulation. The Tibetan Book of the Dead state, "You behold your own karma, yet you mistake it for an external monster. In that moment, you fall once more through the gate of rebirth." This sentence reveals an astonishing psychological insight. The monsters we fear most are not waiting for us outside. They are unresolved forces within the suppressed rage, denied guilt, unexamined desire. They are what we might call the shadow of karma. On the third day after death, according to the text, the wrathful deities appear. The consciousness of the deceased now drifts in darkness. The physical body has collapsed, yet the thread of identity, the sense of I, has not yet dissolved. Sight and hearing have vanished, but raw sensation and fear remain intensely alive. From an unseen distance, a deep and heavy vibration begins to echo. It grows stronger, more overwhelming, until it sounds as if mountains are collapsing, and the sky itself is splitting apart. Then the heavens turn crimson, and the wrathful deities emerge. Their faces are twisted like warriors who have witnessed 1,000 battlefields. In their hands they hold weapons like lightning soaked in blood. Their eyes, made of living flame, burn directly toward the drifting consciousness. Instinctively, the deceased attempts to flee, but there is no body left to escape with. And in that moment, something extraordinary happens. The eyes of the deities vanish one by one. In their place, scenes from one's former life begin to unfold. Moments of deception. Moments when anger pushed loved ones away. Memories of exploiting the weak for personal advantage. These memories rise like fire, melting seamlessly into the furious faces of the gods. The consciousness cries out, "Stop these monsters!" And the monsters answer, "It was not we who created this form. It was you." Only then does realization dawn. These figures were never external enemies. They were the embodied shapes of one's own anger and attachment. At that instant, the sky tears open. A blinding radiance pours forth. The Book of the Dead calls this moment the collapse of hallucination. All forms disintegrate. All projections dissolve. Only karma itself remains. This light is neither warm nor cold. It offers no comfort and no condemnation. It is simply a mirror reflecting truth exactly as it is. Ladies and gentlemen, let us step together into a moment that transcends life as we know it. Imagine the soul standing at the threshold of eternity, bathed in a light that is neither harsh nor soft, neither blinding nor dim, but profoundly revealing. In this light, the soul perceives itself not as a fragment, not as a fleeting identity, but as the sum of everything it has been, the loves it cherished, the hatreds it nursed, the desires it indulged, the fears it harbored, the arrogance it flaunted, and the regrets it could not escape. Every thought, every intention, every action, good and ill alike, flows together in a luminous mirror, reflecting the true shape of the self. It is a moment of ultimate confrontation, not with an external judge, but with the pure, unflinching truth of one's own consciousness. This is the essence of an ancient Buddhist principle, elegantly summarized in the teaching Uogye Tu Sen Tu, Shenyo Sheng Shen Chu. Evil deeds lead to the three lower realms. Virtuous deeds lead to good destinies. Here lies the cornerstone of karma, and samsara actions bear consequences, not because a deity decrees them, but because the universe, in its vast and impartial design, responds to the energy we emit. Evil deeds naturally sink toward suffering, while virtuous deeds rise toward joy. There is no prosecutor, no divine court, no celestial jury. There is only the inexorable law of cause and effect, the reflection of one's own deeds unfolding before the soul. As the soul lingers in this radiant mirror, the light itself begins to divide. One stream shines with a pure, blinding whiteness. Another glows with golden warmth. And yet a third deepens into a shadowy darkness. It is as if the universe itself is whispering, "Your goodness manifests as light. Your wrongdoing descends as darkness." This is the law in action. The three lower paths, hell, the hungry ghost realm, and the animal realm, are not punishments inflicted by others, but natural consequences of actions rooted in harm, greed, or malice. Likewise, the realms of human virtue or celestial delight are not rewards granted by chance, but natural elevations of deeds born in compassion, wisdom, and selflessness. What is most striking and most unsettling is that this reckoning requires no one else. The soul stands alone, confronted with the mirror of its own making. It trembles, hesitates, and finally chooses, guided entirely by the moral weight of its past. If the soul recoils from the light, fleeing into darkness, it finds itself descending into the triad of suffering. If it steps forward into the illuminating glow, it approaches liberation, the gateway to awakening itself. There is no coercion, there is no force, there is only choice, the silent but profound freedom that each moment of consciousness grants us. The Tibetan Book of the Dead speaks of this moment with clarity and poetic precision. If you close your eyes in fear, you will be drawn back into the ocean of rebirth. But if you open your eyes and look toward the light, you will return to your true home. Notice the radical implication of this teaching. The moment of death is not exceptional in its moral weight. Every day, in countless small decisions, we enact the same principle. Every act of kindness brightens our path. Every act of cruelty darkens it. Every avoidance of truth, every indulgence in self-deception is a small retreat from light into shadow. Conversely, courage, compassion, Honesty and generosity open doors we never imagined, not because we are guaranteed reward, but because our actions, like seeds, grow inevitably into their natural outcomes. Let us pause and reflect. If the soul is a mirror, then life itself is a series of mirrors stretching across time. Each moment reflects the previous one and shapes the next. Our joys, our fears, our attachments, and our renunciations are all threads in the vast tapestry of cause and effect. To understand this is not merely to prepare for death, it is to understand life. The light and darkness the soul encounters in its final hour are the culmination of countless daily choices, each as significant as the last. Now imagine for a moment standing before your own mirror of light, not in some abstract metaphysical realm, but here, in your very existence. What do you see? Do you see courage? Do you see fear? Do you see the subtle threads of greed, attachment, resentment? Or do you see the quiet acts of generosity, the small kindnesses, the choices to rise above anger and fear? The universe does not force judgment upon you. It merely allows the reflection to reveal itself, leaving you to choose, moment by moment, where you will step next. This is the profound, sometimes terrifying beauty of the law of karma. You are both the architect and the inhabitant of your moral universe. And so in contemplating the fate of the soul at the moment of death, we find not despair, but an invitation to live more consciously, to act with integrity, and to recognize that our smallest actions resonate far beyond our immediate perception. Every thought and every intention casts a shadow or shines a light, sculpting the path we will follow, whether in this life or beyond. Death, then, is merely the most vivid reflection of a reality we have been shaping all along, the profound truth that the boundaries between the living and the dead, between action and consequence, are not dictated by fate, but by the choices we make. Thus, as we journey through life, we are never merely observers. We are participants in the unfolding drama of cause and effect, writing the story of our souls with every choice, every intention, every act. And when the final moment comes, when the soul stands before the radiant mirror, the question is not whether it will face judgment it already has in every thought and deed. The question is whether it will meet that mirror with fear or with courage. And in that choice, as the Tibetan Book of the Dead reminds us, lies liberation itself. Let us now step deeper into the threshold of existence, into the 3-day passage after death, where the soul arrives at a moment of choice, an uncanny, defining instant, poised between what has been and what may yet be. This is not simply the mechanical turn of fate. It is the profound theater of consciousness, where the very essence of who we have been shapes the contours of what is to come. Here, at the edge of rebirth, the soul is bathed in a strange, penetrating light. In this light, visions of entire worlds unfurl, some resplendent, with palaces gilded in gold, gardens bursting with the scent of blossoms, streams of pure, shimmering water, others soaked in shadow, choked with smoke and blood, valleys reeking of decay and despair. It is a landscape not of matter, but of moral consequence, where each scene reflects not merely a location, but the inner state of the soul that gazes upon it. The instinct is immediate. Gravitate toward warmth, toward beauty, toward comfort. Yet in that instant, a quiet, resonant voice whispers, "It is not the desire you chase, but the dwelling of your heart that shapes your next life." Herein lies the subtle, almost cruel elegance of karma. The soul may seek pleasure, longing, and attachment, yet the universe observes not the allure of desire, but the orientation of consciousness itself. Should the soul fail to understand this principle, following mere instinct or attachment, it steps into the doorway of samsara, re-entry into the cycle of birth and rebirth. At times, this journey is literalized in images that may shock the mind. The intimacy of human union, the primal geometry of conception, the forming of a new life within the womb. The soul is drawn inexorably, absorbed into the creation of a new being. In this process, memory is wiped clean. The vividness of past experience dissolves. What remains is not regret, not longing, but the subtle, indelible trace of karma, the imprint of all deeds, all intentions, all choices. The Tibetan Book of the Dead elucidates this moment with remarkable clarity. Karma follows like a shadow. Virtuous deeds bloom like fragrance. Harmful deeds rise like smoke. Imagine for a moment the shadow of your past actions trailing behind you, invisible, yet inevitable, shaping every choice you take, every path you traverse. Picture virtue spreading its aroma through the universe, guiding, sustaining, elevating, even when unseen. And picture misdeeds, the smoke of unwise or harmful action, drifting and darkening, shaping the next field of experience in ways subtle and profound. It is here, in what the text calls the Bardo of becoming, that the terrifying and the merciful converge. The soul confronts not punishment from an external authority, but the ultimate test of self-recognition. The Bardo is terrifying, precisely because it exposes the raw machinery of consequence. It is merciful precisely because it offers the final opportunity for insight. Here, one may witness the consequences of desire, attachment, and aversion laid bare, and if one chooses wisely, may turn toward liberation rather than repetition. Every choice, every flicker of attention, every movement of the heart in this liminal state shapes the trajectory of existence. Fear, clinging, or avoidance leads inevitably to rebirth, perhaps again into struggle, suffering, limitation. Courage, awareness, and acceptance allow the soul to recognize itself in the light, potentially opening the gateway to liberation. This is not abstract theology, it is philosophy, lived at the extremity of consciousness. And so the Bardo of becoming is at once terrifying and compassionate. Terrifying because it forces the soul to encounter its true nature without disguise. Compassionate because it offers the last mirror in which one may finally see oneself, stripped of illusion. It is a final examination, a last chance for awakening, where insight may transform the echo of karma into a doorway to freedom. Consider this carefully. The cycle of life and death is not punishment, nor is it reward. It is opportunity. Each moment of attachment, each moment of desire, each moment of self-reflection forms the mosaic of the next existence. And the lesson is timeless. The choices of the heart, the orientation of the soul, are what determine the journey beyond. Death is not the end. It is the ultimate lens, magnifying the consequences of all we have done, all we have thought, all we have loved or feared. In contemplating this, we see that life, itself the mundane. Daily life is a rehearsal for the profound choices at the threshold of rebirth. Every act of kindness, every lapse into greed or resentment, every conscious reflection builds the path upon which the soul will step. And when the soul stands before the luminous threshold, the question is not whether fate will punish or reward. It has already been written in the very architecture of consciousness. The question is whether the soul meets this final mirror with clarity and courage, or with blindness and fear. In that choice lies the ultimate liberation. Thus the Bardo reminds us life and death, attachment and release, desire and clarity, they are inseparable. The world of rebirth is not merely beyond our perception. It is reflected continuously in our every thought, every choice, every heartbeat. Understanding this, living consciously, is the practice that transforms fear into insight, repetition into awakening, and shadow into light. Let us pause and consider a profound question. What does the Bardo of becoming, this liminal space between death and rebirth, mean for the modern human? What is the relevance of this mysterious threshold, this so-called Shibal Bardo, in our daily lives? You see, the Shibal Bardo is not confined to some distant posthumous realm. It is not merely the space between the lifeless body and a new incarnation in some remote, ethereal world. No, it is something far closer, far more intimate. It is the terrain of our inner life, the psychological map through which we navigate every moment, every choice, every flicker of consciousness. Every day, each of us passes through countless mini Bardos, unnoticed, yet profoundly influential, where the forces of desire, aversion, fear, and attachment shape the trajectory of our being. Consider this, the moment we are overtaken by anger, when reason falls silent, and our mind is seized by fury. This is the realm of the wrathful deity, a microcosm of hell within ourselves. The instant desire grips us and begins to dictate our actions. That is the threshold of rebirth, the very doorway of samsara, manifesting within our consciousness. When regret tethers us to the past and we clutch memories we cannot release, this is the collapse of illusion, the dissolution of clarity, the subtle death that precedes renewal. In essence, the Shibal Bardo, the liminal space between death and rebirth, is not an external geography, but an internal map of consciousness. It charts the terrain of our inner life, our fears, our attachments, our intentions, our capacity for compassion, and our tendencies toward aversion. And the question that arises is startlingly simple, yet deeply unsettling. How often, in the course of a single day, do we close our eyes in fear? How often do we walk, guided by desire, into our own shadows, blind to the light of understanding? Buddhist teachings, with their characteristic precision, ask us, where are you going right now? The cosmos does not wait until the moment of death to inquire. It asks this question constantly, moment by moment, through the subtle currents of experience. Life and death, virtue and vice, heaven and hell, they are not distant absolutes. They are the trajectory of consciousness itself, the natural unfolding of intention in the mind of the observer. And this brings us to the essential principle of karma. In Western interpretations, karma is often misunderstood. as a system of cosmic reward and punishment. But in its original insight, karma is far subtler, far more profound. It is intention made manifest. The energy of our mental and emotional life, crystallized into patterns that shape the course of our existence. Karma is not merely action. It is the moral and psychological imprint of intention, whether conscious or unconscious, flowing through the matrix of reality to shape experience. Thus, what we call evil karma is not simply the result of wrong action. It is intention rooted in ignorance, in self-centeredness, in the failure to recognize the fundamental impermanence of all phenomena. It is the mind clinging to solidity where there is none, attempting to grasp permanence in a world of ceaseless change. And in this we see the tragedy and the teaching evil acts arise, not from some malevolent cosmic decree, but from unawareness of the essential fluidity of existence. Conversely, good karma is born of compassion, of intentions directed outward rather than inward. It is the conscious cultivation of concern for others, rooted in awareness that our lives are in, that suffering anywhere touches the whole, and that acts of generosity and kindness create patterns of liberation, not only for others, but also for ourselves. In every act of mindful benevolence, every gesture of genuine empathy, every choice to act from understanding rather than impulse, we plant seeds that guide the trajectory of our consciousness toward freedom rather than repetition. And so karma ultimately teaches us that our lives are not random, nor dictated by external fate, but woven from the intentions we nurture in each moment. Every thought, every feeling, every choice, however small, echoes through the fabric of existence, shaping the contours of our inner and outer worlds. To live consciously, with awareness and compassion, is to participate in the co-creation of reality itself, transforming the cycles of suffering into pathways of insight and freedom. In this understanding, we see that the most profound power lies not in controlling the world around us, but in mastering the currents of our own mind, aligning intention with wisdom and heart. If this reflection resonates with you, I invite you to subscribe for more explorations of mind, consciousness, and the hidden principles that shape our lives. Share this video with someone who seeks insight, for the ripples of understanding expand only when they are shared. Before we even notice, life unfolds in countless subtle thresholds, each carrying the weight of choice and the echo of consequence. Every moment, no matter how ordinary, is a reflection of a deeper reality, a silent invitation to examine the patterns of our mind, to recognize the cycles that shape our destiny. In this space, philosophy ceases to be abstract and becomes a living guide, a call to witness, to understand, and to act with clarity. If you find resonance in these reflections, I invite you to subscribe and share this journey so that together we may explore the profound architecture of consciousness. Imagine for a moment your daily life as a series of mini bardos, each a threshold of choice, each a subtle reflection of the ultimate bardo of death and rebirth. Every decision, whether to speak kindly or harshly, to act out of fear or courage, to cling or to release, is a step across the invisible bridge between light and shadow. And yet, most of us move through these thresholds unobserved, unconscious of the enormous significance contained in each fleeting instant. This is where modern psychology and ancient wisdom converge. The mind, in its habitual patterns, constructs small samsaras, miniature cycles of desire, attachment, aversion, and fear, repeating endlessly until we wake to awareness. Every unresolved anger, every indulged craving, every regret, clinging to memory, is a microcosm of the Bardo, a rehearsal for the ultimate confrontation that awaits at the threshold of death. Recognizing this is not merely philosophical speculation, it is practical insight into the architecture of human consciousness. So when we speak of the Shibal Bardo, we are not speaking of death alone. We are speaking of the continuous liminal spaces that structure our daily experience, the invisible thresholds that define whether our consciousness moves toward freedom or repetition. To live mindfully is to navigate these thresholds with awareness, to recognize fear, desire, and attachment as signposts rather than tyrants, and to cultivate intentions rooted in compassion rather than ignorance. In this light, the teaching of karma becomes profoundly relevant. It is not a ledger of reward and punishment, but a mirror reflecting the energy of our mind, shaping the patterns of our experience, moment by moment. Evil karma arises in self-centered, ignorant intentions, blindness to impermanence, and failure to see the interconnectedness of all beings. Good karma arises in intentions rooted in compassion, awareness, and selflessness, creating patterns of liberation that resonate far beyond the individual. In contemplating the Shibal Bardo of modern life, we begin to see that death and rebirth are not distant events, but ongoing processes, unfolding in every choice, every thought, every moment of attention. Life itself becomes a continuous practice of awareness, a rehearsal for the ultimate threshold, the final mirror in which our consciousness will stand revealed. And in understanding this, we find both challenge and hope, the challenge to act consciously in the present, the hope that every moment of awareness, every act of compassion moves us closer to liberation from the cycles of fear, desire, and attachment. Let us now venture into the most profound and psychologically charged aspect of the Shibal, Bardo, the space between death and rebirth. It is here that the wrathful deities appear, not as cosmic punishers, but as living symbols of a universal truth, the ceaseless flux of all phenomena and the absence of inherent existence. These wrathful figures are not external gods. They are projections of the mind, manifestations of unacknowledged fear, anger, desire, and attachment. They call out, "See yourself, confront your own being." Yet most of us, most of the time, close our eyes in terror. And in that moment of avoidance, darkness swallows us once more. We descend into the repetitive cycles of samsara, the endless spiral of rebirth. Not because fate has condemned us, but because our consciousness recoils from the truth it is not yet ready to face. The Tibetan Book of the Dead articulates this starkly. Those who flee are reborn. This simple declaration carries a weight of philosophical and psychological insight that is astonishing in its clarity. The Bardo is not merely a metaphysical space. It is a mirror reflecting the deepest recesses of human consciousness. The wrathful deities are nothing but the shadows of the self, the accumulated projections of suppressed emotions, repressed desires, unacknowledged fears. They are the unresolved, disowned parts of our psyche that, if ignored, wield immense influence over the trajectory of our lives. Consider the words of Carl Jung, whose insights into the human psyche resonate strikingly with the Bardo teachings. If you do not confront your shadow, it will become your destiny and rule you. In other words, the Bardo between death and the next life is, from a psychological perspective, a profound stage of projection and integration. It is a liminal zone where the soul is forced to encounter the shadows it has refused to acknowledge during life. The process is unavoidable. One must either confront the truth within or continue to be drawn into cycles of repetition, carrying unresolved patterns forward into new forms of existence. The death of the body, then, is not an end point. It is the climax of self-integration, the ultimate opportunity for the consciousness to confront its entirety. In this liminal state, there is no escape from the mirror of the self. Every suppressed fear, every denied emotion, every unacknowledged desire rises up in symbolic form, demanding recognition. The wrathful deities, terrifying as they may appear, are the soul's final tutors, insisting on self-awareness. Philosophically, this is a radical statement about human existence. Our deepest trials are not imposed by external forces, but by the unresolved contents of our own psyche. Death, the Bardo, and rebirth serve as the ultimate stages of self-confrontation. The challenge is to see clearly, to face what we have hidden, even from ourselves, and to integrate those elements into a coherent sense of self. Only then does the cycle of fear, avoidance, and compulsive repetition cease. In practical terms, this teaches us something extraordinary about life itself. Every moment we resist acknowledging fear, every time we evade the difficult truths within our minds, we are rehearsing the Bardo. Each act of denial, each moment of turning away from our own shadow, plants seeds for future cycles of repetition. Conversely, each act of courageous self-reflection, each encounter with our own inner darkness, is a step toward liberation, a microcosm of the final integration that death eventually demands. The wrathful deities of the Bardo, then, are not instruments of punishment. They are guides. They embody the universal principle that avoidance prolongs suffering, while conscious engagement fosters freedom. To encounter them is to confront the raw energy of the unacknowledged self, to wrestle with the aspects of our mind that have been denied, and ultimately to reclaim mastery over one's own destiny. In this light, the Bardo becomes the ultimate laboratory of consciousness. It is where the illusions of permanence are stripped away, where the ego faces its shadows, and where the individual has the opportunity to achieve true self-integration. Death, therefore, is not simply a biological cessation. It is the apex of psychological transformation. It is the moment when the accumulated patterns of a lifetime, the fears, desires, attachments, and unresolved conflicts demand recognition, and the soul must either confront them or continue to be ensnared in the ceaseless cycles of rebirth. To stand before the wrathful deities of the Bardo is, in essence, to stand before oneself. The process is frightening because it is uncompromising, relentless, and absolute. Yet it is also merciful because it presents a final opportunity for insight, for integration, and for liberation. By facing these symbolic manifestations of our unacknowledged selves, by opening our eyes to the truths we have avoided, we align with the timeless teaching of the Bardo: freedom is possible, but only through courageous self-recognition. And so as we reflect on the Bardo, we see it not merely as a mythological or religious concept, but as a profound psychological reality, the space in which the self must confront its own shadow, reconcile its fragments, and move toward wholeness. It is here that the convergence of death, rebirth, and consciousness occurs, reminding us that the journey toward self-integration begins not at the moment of death, but in every conscious engagement with the shadows we encounter in life. Let us contemplate the ultimate teaching of Buddhism, distilled into a single, profound truth. All phenomena arise from the mind. When the mind turns toward awakening, there is liberation. When the mind clings to attachment, there is samsara. This principle, simple in words, yet infinite in depth, illuminates the very heart of the human experience. The Tibetan Book of the Dead, particularly in its account of the third day, the so-called Bardo, the intermediate state between death and the next. Rebirth offers not merely a mysterious vision of the afterlife. It is a reflection, a metaphor, and a mirror of the daily dramas, unfolding within our own minds. Every emotion, every moment of attachment, every fear or desire is a miniature bardo, a liminal threshold where the mind chooses its trajectory, whether toward freedom or repetition. Imagine for a moment standing in the presence of wrathful deities, projections of your own unacknowledged anger, fear, and desire. To face them requires courage. The courage to confront one's own shadow. The courage to recognize the hidden corners of the self that one has long avoided. This is the true key to breaking the cycles of samsara. The willingness to look inward, to illuminate what has remained in darkness, and to act with awareness. Only then can the mind disengage from the compulsive repetition of attachment and fear, opening the door to liberation. This teaching is not distant or abstract. It is immediate. It is present in every decision you make, every choice of attention, every engagement with the world. Life itself becomes a mirror of the Bardo, revealing the consequences of how we orient our mind toward clarity, compassion, and presence, or toward distraction, craving, and avoidance. In this sense, every day is a rehearsal for the ultimate confrontation that will one day come at the threshold of death. When we recognize this, we begin to understand why. The Bardo is both terrifying and merciful. It is terrifying because it exposes us to the unflinching truth of our own mind, laying bare the consequences of fear, desire, and avoidance. Yet it is merciful because it offers the opportunity for insight, for self-integration, and for liberation. To choose the light, to open one's eyes in awareness, rather than closing them in fear, is an act of profound courage. And though it may seem small, this act resonates far beyond the individual, potentially illuminating a path for others caught in their own darkness. And so the narrative of the third day of the Bardo is more than a story of death and rebirth. It is a story of life itself, the cycles of attachment and aversion, the ongoing dance of consciousness, and the constant opportunity for choice. The moment when the soul, guided by the weight of its karma, steps toward one of 6 potential paths, is mirrored every day in the choices we make, the attention we give, and the intentions we cultivate. Life in this sense is a continuous rehearsal of the Bardo, a series of liminal thresholds where the direction of the mind determines the unfolding of experience. If this reflection has stirred something within you, if it has prompted a quiet resonance in your mind, then consider subscribing to this channel. Subscription is more than a simple click. It is a symbolic affirmation, a small commitment to opening your eyes toward the light, even in the midst of daily distractions and challenges. Every choice to act with awareness, every moment of engagement with clarity and compassion is a spark that may one day illuminate the path for another soul wandering in darkness. Thank you for watching until the end. May your mind move steadily toward the light. This story does not depict the afterlife as something to fear. Rather, it illustrates the direction of the mind that we choose every day, the choices that determine whether we dwell in attachment, fear, and repetition, or move toward clarity, compassion, and liberation. And now, let us turn to the precise moment in the narrative, the third day after death, when the soul encounters the consequences of its karma and steps toward one of 6 possible paths. This is not merely a story of life after death. It is a vivid illustration of life itself, of how the cycles of rebirth and attachment are continuously present, woven into the fabric of our daily existence. By observing this, we see that liberation is not reserved for some mystical future. It is available now. In every conscious choice, every deliberate act, every moment we direct our mind toward clarity and understanding. If you find resonance in this story, please like and subscribe, allowing this narrative of light to continue. Each act of engagement, each moment of awareness becomes part of the ripple that carries insight, compassion, and awakening forward, not just for yourself, but for the countless others whose lives intersect with yours. The ultimate teaching of the Shibo Bardo is clear. The mind determines the journey. When oriented toward insight, it is liberation. When clinging to attachment, it is samsara. And every day, every moment provides the opportunity to step consciously into the light, to face the shadows within, and to participate fully in the continuous drama of life, choice, and awakening. Let us now journey to a pivotal moment in the narrative of the Shibo Bardo, a moment of profound revelation the third day after death, when the mirror of karma finally opens before the consciousness of the departed. After the passage of 3 nights, the soul enters a realm where light and darkness diverge, where the consequences of every action and intention are revealed with unflinching clarity. Imagine a space suspended in infinite emptiness, a vast shimmering expanse of silver light in which a colossal mirror floats, impossibly large, reflecting the totality of existence itself. Before this mirror stands the soul, trembling, and the mirror speaks not in words of accusation, but in the quiet voice of absolute truth. I will show you your deeds. And then the waves begin. Memories rise like tides, sweeping across the consciousness. Laughter and anger, envy and compassion, love and betrayal, greed and generosity. Every action, every thought, every subtle intention is reflected with complete fidelity. Nothing is hidden, nothing is diminished, nothing distorted. The mirror does not judge, it simply reveals. And then comes a voice, resonant, timeless, echoing through the boundless space. Those who have accumulated evil karma shall enter the 3 lower paths. Those who have cultivated good karma shall enter the paths of virtue. At that moment, the heavens and the earth seem to separate. Light and shadow part, forming distinct avenues, each calling the soul toward its destined journey. 6 paths emerge from this cosmic revelation, each reflecting the moral and spiritual architecture of samsara. These are the 6 realms of rebirth, the Rokudo, the 6 pathways of existence that structure the cycles of life and death. Philosophically, this is more than a story of the afterlife. It is a vivid allegory of consciousness itself. The mirror symbolizes the inescapable reflection of our own actions. Every choice, every intention, every unresolved desire and fear is recorded, not as an external judgment, but as the natural consequence of the mind. Karma, in its essence, is not imposed, it unfolds, according to the patterns we ourselves have created. And in this there is both terror and mercy. Terror, because the truth is absolute. Merciful, because revelation offers the possibility of understanding and liberation. Imagine standing before such a mirror in life, not just after death. Every decision you make, every ethical or unethical choice, every impulse you indulge or restrain is a fragment of the reflection that will one day confront you. The laughter, the betrayals, the moments of generosity, all ripple forward, creating pathways, shaping destinies, and guiding the consciousness, either toward light or into the cycles of repetition. This is the essence of the Bardo, the threshold, where the soul encounters itself, where the invisible ledger of mind becomes visible, where freedom and entrapment are determined by awareness. The 6 realms themselves are more than abstract concepts. They are psychological landscapes as well as metaphysical realities. The realm of the gods, the realm of humans, the realm of animals, hungry ghosts, demonic beings, and the realm of hell, all are symbolic mirrors of consciousness. Each realm reflects tendencies and states within the mind. Attachment, aversion, fear, pride, desire, ignorance. To enter a particular realm is to follow the trajectory laid out by one's own habitual patterns. And yet the Bardo does not close the door, it illuminates it. Awareness can redirect the soul, even at this final threshold, if courage and clarity are present. The mirror, then, is not merely a device of judgment. It is a teaching. It is a demonstration of the principle that all phenomena arise from the mind. The light and shadow, the division of paths, the unfolding of destiny, all are contingent upon consciousness, upon the intentions and energies we cultivate during life. The Bardo of the 3rd day is the apex of this revelation, the moment when the soul, confronted with the totality of its being, must acknowledge the truth it has often avoided. In this sense, the story of the mirror in the Shibal Bardo resonates deeply with modern psychological insight. The reflective experience is analogous to moments in our waking life, when we are forced to confront our actions, our fears, and our attachments. It is an inner reckoning, a confrontation with the shadow aspects of the self that Jung describes so compellingly. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Here, in the luminous expanse of the mirror, we see the same principle enacted. The unconscious becomes visible. The hidden intentions of the mind are laid bare, and the consequences of each action are revealed. The 6 paths are the archetypal outcomes of these intentions, demonstrating that freedom and entrapment are not imposed externally, but arise from within. And so the mirror teaches both caution and hope. It reminds us that nothing is hidden from the awareness of the mind. and that our choices echo through existence, shaping the trajectory of consciousness. It also reminds us that at any moment, awareness and courage can redirect the flow, that understanding and insight are always possible, and that liberation is available, even in the face of the most profound revelation. Thus, the third day of the Bardo, standing before the mirror, is both a culmination and a beginning. A culmination of all actions, intentions, and energies accumulated in life, and a beginning of understanding, awareness, and potential liberation. The mirror reflects not merely what has been, but the possibilities that arise from conscious engagement. In this, the Shibal Bardo becomes not a distant myth, but a living metaphor for the human experience, an eternal reminder that our inner life, our awareness, and our choices determine the worlds we inhabit, both within and beyond. Let us now explore the first of the 6 paths revealed on the third day after. Death, the path known as the realm of hell, or Jigokudo. This is the path taken by those whose lives were dominated by anger, violence, and the cruelty of unchecked impulses. It is within the Buddhist framework of the 6 realms, the most harrowing and painful of all existences, a world where the consequences of past actions manifest in their most extreme form. Imagine, if you can, a gate wreathed in red flames, pulsing with heat and energy. This is the threshold of hell itself. As the gate opens, souls are drawn into a landscape of unending torment. These are not abstract punishments imposed by a deity, but the natural consequences of a mind that has clung to hatred and resentment. Those who enter this realm are the embodiments of the anger they nurtured in life, the political tyrant who crushed the weak for personal gain, the warmonger who ignited conflict to serve ambition, the individual whose inability to control rage caused harm to others. Each soul finds itself enveloped by the very suffering it inflicted, as if the flames themselves are the physical echo of their own inner turmoil. Here, the heat is relentless. The flames do not consume in a moment and fade, but instead they rise again and again, reflecting the enduring power of unrelenting anger. Pain is not external. It is born from the mind itself. The Tibetan Book of the Dead describes it with profound clarity. Those who cannot release anger burn themselves in the fire. The fire is not outside, it is the karma of the mind. Consider this deeply. The suffering of hell is not the arbitrary punishment of an external force. It is the inescapable reflection of unresolved inner states. Every act of cruelty, every word spoken in malice, every intention rooted in hatred becomes an energetic imprint, a force that continues to affect the consciousness long after the body has perished. The flames of hell are, in essence, mirrors of the mind's unresolved conflicts, illuminating how destructive emotions, if left unchecked, shape the trajectory of existence itself. Philosophically, this insight is staggering. It suggests that the ultimate punishment is self-inflicted, that the mind, when dominated by anger, projects its own torment into the very fabric of reality. There is no external deity decreeing retribution. The law is intrinsic, inescapable, yet profoundly instructive. Anger and violence are seeds planted in consciousness, and the realm of hell is the natural unfolding of these seeds. Liberation is only possible when the mind recognizes its own patterns. and consciously lets go of the impulses that bind it to suffering. In psychological terms, the realm of hell represents the consequence of failing to integrate the shadow aspects of oneself. Jungian psychology would call this the unacknowledged rage, the parts of the self that have been repressed, but continue to influence behavior in destructive ways. Until these shadows are recognized and integrated, they manifest in cycles of pain and repetition. Just as in the Bardo, the soul in hell cannot escape the consequences of its own unresolved patterns. The fiery landscape is symbolic of this inner reality. Each flame, each wave of heat mirrors the intensity and persistence of anger and resentment within the psyche. Moreover, the hell realm teaches a vital lesson about responsibility and awareness. In life, when anger dominates our mind, we often project it outward, blaming others, seeking vengeance, or pursuing self-interest at the expense of compassion. In the Bardo, these patterns return, concentrated and amplified. The torment is both literal and metaphorical, a mirror of the suffering we have caused and the suffering we have refused to confront within ourselves. The fire does not judge, it reflects. It is a natural consequence, a manifestation of the law of karma, and a final opportunity for insight. The first path, the realm of hell, therefore serves as a profound metaphor for the human condition. It reminds us that unchecked anger and malice carry consequences far beyond the immediate moment, shaping the contours of consciousness itself. It also reminds us that liberation is possible, but only through acknowledgement, acceptance, and the courageous act of releasing destructive patterns. The fire is not eternal in the sense of being arbitrary. It endures only as long as the mind clings to its own unresolved anger. Let go, and the flames no longer hold sway. As we reflect on this first path, let it serve as both warning and invitation. Anger, when unexamined and unintegrated, becomes the architect of suffering, creating realms of torment both within and beyond life. Yet, awareness and conscious choice can redirect its energy. Just as the Bardo reflects the consequences of the mind's patterns, our daily lives mirror these same principles. The moments we allow anger to dictate our actions are microcosms of hell. The moments we choose awareness, compassion, and restraint are steps toward liberation, toward a conscious shaping of our destiny, and toward a mind unbound by the chains of past harm. In the narrative of the Shibal Bardo, the first path, the realm of hell, is the ultimate illustration of the principle that the mind creates its own reality. It is a vivid, dramatic reminder that suffering is not punishment inflicted by others, but the inevitable reflection of unresolved emotions and unskillful intentions. And it is within this understanding, paradoxically, that hope arises. The hope that insight, self-awareness, and deliberate action can transform even the most terrifying landscape into an opportunity for liberation. Ladies and gentlemen, as we continue our journey through the Shibal Bardo, we arrive at the second of the 6 paths revealed on the 3rd day after death, the realm of hungry ghosts, or Gakido. This is the domain of those whose lives were dominated by greed, desire, and attachment, a world defined by insatiable craving and unfulfilled longing. Imagine, if you can, a gate opening into a barren desert where endless sands stretch beyond the horizon and a relentless wind scours the land. Here, in this desolate expanse, Souls wander in search of sustenance, yet each effort is met with frustration. The hunger is profound, the thirst unquenchable. These are not external punishments imposed by divine decree, but the natural outcome of lives lived in relentless attachment, of minds that sought fulfillment outside themselves, and of hearts that measured worth by possession rather than understanding. The inhabitants of this realm are those who, in life, were consumed by the desire to acquire, to possess, to control. Merchants who deceived others for wealth, officials who sought power at the expense of integrity, lovers who treated their partners as objects of possession rather than beings of intrinsic value, all now find themselves trapped in a mirror of their own obsessions. Their bellies are swollen as mountains, yet their throats are narrow as needles, ensuring that no matter how much they consume, satisfaction is forever out of reach. Each morsel becomes ash. Each sip of water transforms into dust and blood, a symbolic reflection of the futility of craving when it dominates the mind. The Tibetan Book of the Dead offers a profound insight into this realm. Greed is never satisfied. The moment one tries to fill it, the hunger deepens. Philosophically, the realm of hungry ghosts illustrates the insidious nature of attachment. Desire, when unexamined and unchecked, becomes a force that perpetuates suffering. It is not merely a moral failing, it is an energetic pattern that shapes the consciousness, creating a cycle of longing and dissatisfaction. The more one seeks external fulfillment, the more pronounced the inner emptiness becomes. This is not an arbitrary punishment. It is the natural consequence of a mind oriented outward, endlessly grasping, never content, never at peace. Psychologically, this realm is a powerful metaphor for our everyday lives. Consider the moments when desire and attachment dominate our choices. The craving for status, the obsession with material gain, the compulsion to possess or control others. These patterns create an inner hunger that no external achievement can satiate. Like the souls in the Gakido, we may find ourselves chasing fulfillment in ways that leave us perpetually unsatisfied, turning each success into a fleeting illusion, each pleasure into temporary relief. The fire of greed is internal, the desert, vast and unyielding. And yet the path toward liberation is possible if one turns inward, cultivating contentment, mindfulness, and awareness. The imagery of the narrow throat and the swollen belly is deeply instructive. It conveys the paradox of attachment. The very mechanisms we believe will bring satisfaction, acquisition, control, indulgence become the instruments of suffering. Each act of consumption, each attempt to grasp, strengthens the patterns of craving and dependency. The Gakido teaches that fulfillment cannot be found outside that truth. Contentment arises only from transforming the mind and releasing the compulsive desire that binds it. Furthermore, this realm invites reflection on the impermanence and interdependence of all things. The hunger and thirst of the hungry ghost are not eternal in themselves. They endure only as long as attachment persists. Awareness, insight, and deliberate choice can transform the landscape. Just as the Bardo reveals the consequences of action, so too does it illuminate the possibility of liberation. The moment the mind turns from external craving to internal clarity, the desert begins to yield, the hunger diminishes, and the soul moves toward freedom. In the narrative of the Shibal Bardo, the realm of hungry ghosts serves as both warning and guidance. It illustrates the natural consequences of insatiable desire, while also offering a mirror through which the living can examine their own attachments. The suffering is real, yet the possibility of insight and transformation remains ever present. By understanding that craving is self-created, we are invited to cultivate generosity, restraint, and mindfulness. In doing so, we step out of the desert of endless longing and toward a state of balance and fulfillment, both in life and in the cycles beyond. Thus, the second path, the Gakido, is more than a vision of the afterlife. It is a profound metaphor for human consciousness, revealing how desire shapes experience, how attachment perpetuates suffering, and how awareness and intention can redirect the course of the mind. Just as the hungry ghosts suffer from insatiable longing, we too may experience the consequences of unexamined desire in our daily lives. Yet through mindfulness, ethical action, and the cultivation of insight, liberation is always within reach. In summary, the realm of hungry ghosts is a testament to the profound law of karma, that the patterns we cultivate in life echo in consciousness, creating worlds of satisfaction or suffering according to our intentions. The desert, the wind, the insatiable hunger, all are reflections of mind. And in recognizing this, we are offered not despair, but profound hope. The hope that through awareness, compassion, and disciplined practice, even the deepest cravings can be transformed, and the soul can move toward light, freedom, and true fulfillment. On the third day after death, the deceased faces the third path in the Bardo, the realm of animals, or Chikushodo. This is the domain for those who have accumulated karma through ignorance and foolishness, those whose lives were dominated by unawareness, indifference, and lack of discernment. In Buddhist cosmology, this realm encompasses all animal life: beasts, insects, birds, fish, manifesting according to the karmic imprints of previous actions. It is a world where suffering is inherent and consciousness is limited, where the mind is governed by instinct rather than reflection, a state that mirrors the consequences of a life lived without wisdom. Visualize the threshold to this realm, a dense fog, enveloping a vast field, the air thick with the scent of earth and decay. Within this space, the forms of countless creatures emerge: cows, dogs, snakes, pigs, horses, and flocks of birds. Yet these beings move not by conscious choice, but by instinct alone, their existence stripped of higher awareness. Those who enter this path are the living embodiments of ignorance they failed to recognize right from wrong, remained indifferent to the suffering of others, and neglected to contemplate the purpose and meaning of life. Here, the punishment is not cruel by divine decree, rather, it is a natural consequence and simultaneously a profound opportunity. As beasts, these souls experience firsthand the suffering they once ignored or avoided, learning humility and compassion through embodied experience. The animal life becomes a school of wisdom. Suffering is no longer abstract, but tangible, teaching empathy and respect for life. The fourth path, following the realm of animals, is the realm of asuras, or asurado, which is traversed by those who accumulated karma through jealousy, envy, and relentless competition. The gateway to this path is a battlefield, armor clashing, blades entwined, the earth and sky trembling beneath the fury of endless combat. This is the domain of the warrior spirits, consumed by rivalry, consumed by the desire to dominate and surpass others. Those who enter this realm were driven in life by envy and the relentless pursuit of victory, constantly comparing themselves with others, seeking honor, recognition, and triumph. Here, the conflict is eternal. Victory breeds arrogance. Defeat incites rage. The cycle repeats endlessly, a mirror to the competitive and envious mind. As the Tibetan Book of the Dead teaches, the joy of victory is fleeting, the suffering of comparison endless. And then comes the fifth path, the human realm, or Ninjendo, traversed by those whose karma is balanced, neither dominated by extreme greed, anger, nor ignorance. The gateway opens to a peaceful landscape of flowing rivers and clear skies, a realm where joy and sorrow coexist, imperfection and beauty entwined. This is the human world, a domain where ethical choice, moral discernment, and conscious action are possible. Those who enter this realm are reborn as humans, offered the unique opportunity to learn through love and loss, to encounter suffering and joy, and to cultivate wisdom through experience. Buddhism holds the human realm as the most precious of all, for it is here, and only here, that beings can consciously choose between right and wrong, virtue and vice. It is a realm of potential, a landscape of ethical responsibility and spiritual opportunity. As the Tibetan teachings remind us, to be born as a human is more difficult than threading a single hair through the eye of a needle. In psychological and philosophical terms, these paths, the animal, the Asura, and the human, offer profound lessons for our lives. The animal realm teaches us the consequences of ignorance and the necessity of cultivating awareness. The Asura realm illuminates the destructive patterns of envy and comparison, showing how internal conflicts can manifest in relentless cycles of struggle. And the human realm, with its balance of suffering and joy, presents the ultimate opportunity, the chance to reflect, to choose consciously, and to engage in the cultivation of virtue, compassion, and wisdom. As we contemplate these realms, it becomes clear that the Shibal Bardo is not merely a post-mortem journey, but a vivid metaphor for consciousness itself. Every moment of ignorance, every act of envy or unbridled desire, and every balanced choice in life mirrors the realms of rebirth, showing that our actions, rooted in awareness or ignorance, create realities both within and around us. The landscapes of animal instinct, relentless rivalry, and human potential are not distant or mythical. They are reflections of the inner states we cultivate daily. Thus, on the third day after death, as the deceased traverses these paths, we are reminded that life itself is a continuous interplay of awareness, choice, and consequence. The Shibal Bardo reveals in profound clarity that the states of existence, whether animal, warrior, or human, are mirrors of our mind, our intentions, and our capacity for growth. The journey is both cautionary and instructive, showing us that ignorance, envy, and attachment bind us to suffering, while awareness, compassion, and balance open the door to liberation. In essence, the third, fourth, and fifth paths are lessons in consciousness. The animal realm warns of the dangers of unawareness. The Asura realm cautions against envy and competitiveness. And the human realm celebrates the potential for conscious ethical action and spiritual growth. By contemplating these realms, we are invited to examine our own patterns of thought and behavior, to see where we are governed by ignorance, where envy arises, and where conscious choice allows for transformation. The Shibal Bardo thus speaks to the living as much as to the dead. The worlds it reveals are within us, mirrored in every choice we make, every emotion we harbor, and every intention we cultivate. By seeing the animal, asura, and human realms as reflections of our inner landscape, we are given the opportunity to awaken, to recognize the patterns that bind us, and to consciously step toward balance, compassion, and liberation. On the third day after death, the deceased faces the sixth and final path in the Shibal Bardo, the heavenly realm, or Tenshodo. This is the path for those whose karma has ripened into merit, for those whose lives were steeped in acts of compassion, selflessness, and genuine love. In Buddhist cosmology, the heavenly realm is one of the 6 worlds of rebirth, the world of the gods, a place of serenity, bliss, and ease, where beings enjoy the fruits of virtuous deeds. Imagine the gateway, a radiant palace bathed in pure, dazzling light, a world suffused with luminous energy. Here dwell those who have lived lives of virtue, who cultivated compassion and sacrificed for others. They move through existence unburdened by pain, coexisting with beings of light, and experiencing joy beyond the grasp of ordinary understanding. Yet even here, the Tibetan Book of the Dead offers a profound warning. Even in the heavenly realm, one is not free from the cycle of rebirth. Attachment to pleasure leads inevitably to descent. The joy of this realm is transient. When the merit of past actions is exhausted, even the denizens of heaven return to the human realm to cultivate new karma, continuing the cycle of life and rebirth. This is the great paradox. Even the most sublime bliss is impermanent, reminding us that no external condition can provide lasting liberation. Only the mind can. As the third day progresses, all 6 paths, the realms of hell, hungry ghosts, animals, asuras, humans, and heaven are visible, yet their doors close, gradually, leaving the deceased momentarily suspended in the void between worlds. Then a low, gentle voice emerges from the heavens. Now you must choose. Will you close your eyes in fear or open them with compassion? The soul hesitates, weighing the pull of attachment against the call of insight. And then, slowly, deliberately, it moves toward a streak of azure, light a beacon of clarity and grace. Whether this path leads to hell, the human realm, or heaven is unknown. What is certain is that the soul is guided entirely by the momentum of its own karma. These 6 paths are not merely posthumous destinations. They are reflections of the mind, a mirror of our inner states. Consider this. When we are consumed by anger, we traverse the hellish landscapes of our own inner torment. When greed and desire dominate us, we endure the starvation of the hungry ghosts, the gnawing emptiness of unfulfilled cravings. When ignorance clouds our judgment, we stumble through the darkness of the animal realm. When envy and rivalry inflame our hearts, we fight endless battles in the asura realm. When we cultivate balance, discernment, and mindful awareness, we walk the human path, a realm of potential and ethical choice. And when we practice true compassion and wisdom, we experience the luminous serenity of the heavenly realm. In other words, the 6 paths of rebirth are not merely future states, they are the map of the mind in the present moment. Every choice, every thought, every intention shapes the landscape of our inner world, just as karma shapes the journey of the soul. The 6 gates the deceased faces on the 3rd day are not external. They are portals within the mind itself. Ultimately, the Buddhist teaching converges into a single, profound truth. All karma arises from the mind, and all liberation is perfected in the mind. This is why the Shibal Bardo is not a story of fear, but a meditation on consciousness, choice, and responsibility. The heavenly realm, like all realms, is a reflection of the mind's tendencies. True liberation comes not from external circumstances, but from the conscious choice to awaken, to turn toward light, to embrace compassion, to cultivate wisdom. If this story illuminates even a small corner of your inner darkness, then I encourage you to subscribe and like this channel. Each click is more than a simple action. It is a symbolic affirmation that you are choosing light over darkness, awareness over attachment, and liberation over ignorance. Thank you for joining this journey. In the next episode, we will explore the threshold of rebirth, the meaning of entering a new life after the Shibal Bardo, and the profound Buddhist insights into the cycle of reincarnation. Together, we will delve into the mystery of rebirth, the profound interplay of karma, consciousness, and the potential for awakening within each of us. Remember, the heavenly realm, like all 6 realms, is both a destination and a reflection, a mirror of our present mind. By observing these paths, we do not merely study philosophy. We witness the currents of our own consciousness, recognize the weight of each intention, and cultivate a life guided by awareness, courage, and compassionate insight. Let this understanding ripple outward, share it, carry it forward, and allow the light of mindful living to touch others as it transforms yourself. Today's broadcast is guided by the teachings of the Tibetan Book of the Dead, one of humanity's most profound contemplations on consciousness, death, and rebirth. This text does not speak merely about what happens after death. Rather, it reveals something far more unsettling and transformative: how the mind encounters itself when all familiar structures collapse. Our focus today is a very specific moment, the 3rd dawn after death, when the deceased stands at the very threshold of rebirth. It is a moment not of judgment by an external power, but of recognition or failure of recognition by consciousness itself. My hope is that today's journey will lead you to reconsider not only death, but life, identity, and the nature of awareness itself. If you wish to continue this exploration into the deepest layers of mind and meaning, I invite you to subscribe. Your single click allows this journey of inquiry to continue. According to Tibetan tradition, on the 3rd morning after death, a monk begins to read aloud, not for the living, but for the dead. He speaks directly to the consciousness that has just lost its body. Now listen, O noble one, you have already cast off the shell of flesh. You drift alone upon the winds of consciousness. Do not be afraid. All forms that now appear before you are nothing but reflections of your own mind. The light you see is not the true light. It is the deceptive glow born of your own desire. At this point, something extraordinary happens. The deceased does not yet feel dead. He looks at his hands. There is no substance, no solidity. And yet, strangely, he can still reach out. He can still feel. He senses movement, vibration, a trembling in the air itself. Confusion arises. Is this death? Everything seems gone, yet I remain. Someone is calling him. The voice feels unfamiliar, yet hauntingly intimate. And then the light appears. It is overwhelmingly bright. It pulls him toward itself and terrifies him at the same time. He is not ready. His mind is still heavy with attachments. The face of his child, the shape of his home, the sound of his name. All of it is dissolving, slipping away toward the other side. At this moment, we must pause and ask a crucial question. Why does the deceased experience this on the third dawn? Why this particular confusion, this particular confrontation? The Tibetan Book of the Dead does not view death as an ending. It sees death as the final examination of awareness, the last opportunity for consciousness to recognize its own true nature. That is why, at this exact moment, the monk speaks again. Now listen, O noble one. Though you have left the body, your mind still searches for it. Realize that your consciousness is empty, like open space. Everything you see now is nothing more than a projection of your own mind. The purpose of this experience is precise and uncompromising: to awaken the deceased to the truth that the self he believes he is has never been solid. The body has vanished, but the sense of I remains. This state is known in Buddhism as the Bardo. Body, an intermediate form of existence in which physical matter has dissolved, yet habitual identity persists. When the text says, he looks at his hands and finds no substance, yet he still touches and feels, it describes a condition in which form has disappeared, but consciousness has not yet awakened. The body is no longer material, but karmic momentum, the accumulated force of past actions, continues to generate perception, like a lingering echo after a sound is ended. These sensations are not real in the physical sense. They are phantom perception shadows cast by consciousness, attempting to grasp what no longer exists. The Book of the Dead describes this phase as the mind trying to seize its own shadow. At its core, this is not fear of death. It is fear of non-existence, the desperate wish to continue being someone. Then comes the light. The light is too strong. It draws me in, but I am afraid. This light is not a hallucination. In Tibetan Buddhism, it is known as the clear light of the Dharmakaya, the pure, original nature of mind itself. On the third day after death, consciousness can no longer cling to the body, and for the first time it encounters its own ground, its source. But the deceased recoils. Why? Because that light does not promise survival of the ego. It signifies its complete dissolution. To merge with that light is to abandon the story of me. Still bound by karmic habits, the deceased mistakes liberation for annihilation. Salvation feels like destruction. He wants to remain someone. He wants to return to something. Thus, the light appears not as refuge, but as threat. The text tells us he still has many attachments to this world: the face of his child, his home, his name. This is what Tibetan Buddhism calls the wind of karma. These attachments are not emotional in a sentimental sense. They are forces. They are the very currents that push consciousness back into the cycle of rebirth. The monk's voice grows stern at this point. The moment you think of your child, your wealth, your name, you will fall again into the darkness of ignorance. All of these are illusions created by your own mind. Return to your original light. This moment is a gateway between ignorance and awakening, between rebirth and liberation. If attachment is released, consciousness dissolves into light. If grasping remains, it is swept once more into the wheel of becoming. The third dawn after death is therefore a moment of profound tension. The belief I have not died clashes with the terror everything is gone. Through this ordeal, Tibetan Buddhism seeks to guide the deceased toward a single realization that what he has been chasing his entire life was never outside him. The monk reads not to save him, but to remind him, to help him recognize the light not as an enemy, but as his own original mind. The Book of the Dead leaves us with a haunting insight. If the light frightens you, it is because you have not yet recognized your own mind. And so I leave you with this question. The journey beyond fear, the passage through light rather than away from it, is not reserved for death alone. It begins now. If you wish to continue this journey, subscribe, and in the next episode, we will step closer to the gate of that light together. We now arrive at one of the most decisive moments described in the Tibetan Book of the Dead, the third dawn after death, when the consciousness of the deceased stands at the edge of what? Tibetan Buddhism calls Sidpa Bardo the threshold of rebirth. At this hour, the monk begins his recitation once again, speaking not to a body, but to awareness itself. He says, "Now listen, O noble one, the morning of the third day has dawned. You have abandoned the illusion of flesh, yet the shadows of the mind still cling to you. When the fire of desire ignites, you will be swept back into the waves of rebirth. This must be cut away. The worlds of pleasure you behold, those golden palaces, are nothing but phantoms. What follows is not a vision imposed by gods or judges. It is a vision generated by the deceased's own mind. The deceased sees his home. He sees his wife weeping. She calls his name, but he cannot answer. He tries to speak, but no sound reaches her. He reaches out. His hand passes through her shoulder. He is still here, yet she has already begun to let him go. This is the first wound of death. Not separation from the world, but the realization that the world can continue without you. Then, suddenly, another vision erupts. A brilliant golden gate opens before him. Behind it lies everything he failed to attain in life. Wealth, power, youth, recognition, honor. All of it beckons. All of it promises fulfillment. And yet, from deep within his awareness, a familiar voice arises. All that you see is hollow illusion. The moment you grasp it, you will fall once more into suffering. At this point, we must ask an essential question. Why does the mind conjure visions of the spouse, wealth, power, youth, and glory on the third day? According to the Tibetan Book of the Dead, the third day marks the moment just before consciousness enters Sidpa, Bardo, the state in which rebirth becomes inevitable. It is the point at which awareness is pulled most forcefully by tanha, craving, attachment, desire. The text describes a precise psychological progression. The first day is confusion. Consciousness does not yet recognize that life has ended. The second day is confrontation, terrifying lights, sounds, and the collapse of the familiar self. The third day is temptation, the powerful resurgence of the wish to live again. On this day, the deceased does not flee from fear. He turns toward longing. At this stage, consciousness projects what it loved most in life: the spouse, the family, status, possession, youth, authority. These are not random images. They are the deepest gravitational centers of the former life. The Book of the Dead warns, all that you loved will reappear before you. It is not light, but shadow. Not reality, but the mirror of desire. The moment you grasp it, the wind of rebirth will swallow you. The meaning is precise. The wife, the home, the golden gate. None of these are objectively real. They are karmic images generated by the accumulated weight of attachment. They reveal exactly what the deceased could not release while alive. In that moment, the thought arises, I am still here. I can still have. I can still be. This is the most dangerous illusion of all, because attachment summons the wind of karma, what the text calls karma lung. This wind does not punish. It propels. It carries consciousness back toward embodiment, toward the womb, toward another cycle of birth and decay. And this brings us to a deeper question. Why is pleasure the form of the final illusion? Tibetan Buddhism teaches that all cyclic existence arises from the three poisons: greed, anger, and ignorance. On the second day, the deceased confronts fear and confusion, anger and ignorance. But on the third day, something far subtler emerges: desire, the whisper. I want to live again. I want to be happy again. This craving is far more dangerous than fear. Fear repels. Desire attracts. Fear may cause withdrawal, but desire makes us reach out. And so the deceased turns away from the path of light and steps toward the golden gate created by his own longing. This moment is not a divine judgment. It is a self-administered examination. The final test is not imposed from outside. It arises from within. The Book of the Dead states, if you choose the shadow over the light, you will be born again into darkness. But if you look directly at the shadow, it dissolves, and the gate of liberation opens. Thus, the visions of wealth, power, and pleasure are not meant to deceive. They are meant to reveal. They expose what remains unresolved, what still binds the mind to becoming. This is why advanced meditators recognize a similar pattern at the end of deep practice. As stillness deepens, the last illusion of self often appears, a subtle image of identity, importance, or desire. If recognized as illusion, awakening completes itself. If mistaken for truth, the mind re-enters its habitual loops. Most consciousnesses, the text tells us, choose familiarity over freedom. They believe the illusion. They walk willingly back into it. And so the warning is spoken one final time. See the beloved, but do not grasp. See the golden gate, but do not enter. It is the shadow of light, the husk of desire. The third day after death teaches us something unsettling and universal. Rebirth is not forced upon us. It is chosen again and again by what we refuse to let go. In the next stage, we will see what happens when the wind of karma finally carries consciousness forward. Until then, ask yourself, if everything you desire appeared before you now, would you recognize it as light or as shadow? As the third day draws to a close, night descends not only upon the world of the living, but upon the journey of the departed consciousness itself. Once more the monk speaks, his words now softer, yet more decisive than before. He says, "Now listen, O noble one. The night of the third day has arrived. You now enter again into the ocean of dreams. If you do not lose the center of your mind, you yourself will become light and find the path. But if attachment and longing remain, you will take on another body, whether human, animal, or divine. Wherever you go, it will be the destination chosen by your own consciousness. At this moment, the struggle ceases. The deceased responds not with panic, but with quiet recognition. I must go. All sounds begin to fade. The voices, the visions, even the fear itself recede into distance. And yet within him, something stirs. A subtle vibration, a gentle resonance, like the first movement of life in a womb. Is this the beginning of another existence, or is it simply another image created by the mind? The deceased cannot know, but one truth has become unmistakably clear. Everything light and darkness, fear and desire, heaven and terror was a road shaped by his own mind. Nothing was imposed from outside. Nothing was decided by judgment or punishment. It was consciousness, moving according to its own tendencies. And now the deceased steps onto that road, a place where light and darkness are no longer opposed, but intertwined, where becoming begins again. This brings us to the final teaching. The world after death is not a distant myth, nor a mystical realm reserved for another time. It is a reflection of the mind already present within us, here and now. The Bardos, described in the Tibetan Book of the Dead, are not merely post-mortem states. They are transitions we pass through repeatedly in life, in loss, in fear, in transformation, and in moments when identity dissolves and reforms. If today's reflection has offered you even a moment of calm, even a small shift in how you view life and death, I invite you to share that awareness by subscribing, by liking, by continuing this journey together. Because even now, in this very moment, we are walking the boundary between living and dying, between sleep and awakening. Do not fear the light. That light has always been you.